Stephen Boehm, how you doing, man?
I am great. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with the creative community.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this one. You're booked out for so long. I think I was
Yeah,
on here for a couple months waiting for you.
yeah, it's been a surprise. It's been a surprise. Didn't even expect I would be doing this at all. If you would have bet me money 2 years ago, I would have told you that you were just wasting your money because it's never going to happen, anyways. But here I am, and yeah, I've got a few episodes booked out. But they've been going good. I've been enjoying the conversation, learning about other creative stories and how it kind of sometimes similarly relates to my journey that I've had. Um,
Right.
I think the more as creatives we can be open and share our stories and express different things, better off the rest of the community will be.
I agree. And you know what? You're like the perfect guy for it because you just have like this very mellow energy. It's just
Right
like,
on.
yeah, you know what I mean? So it's just like it doesn't feel forced at all. It's just going with the flow. I like that.
Yeah, cool, cool. I appreciate that. Let me give the audience introduction here for you,
All right.
so they get a feel for who you are and what we might be talking about throughout this conversation. You are a multi-talented artist, educator, and an author. As a recording artist, you're a former touring punk musician turned acclaimed audio engineer with over 16 years experience in music production. You're the co-founder of Marston House Recording, one of Philadelphia's most respected studios, producing across every genre and shaping the city's creative soundscape. You're the creator of Marston House Ciphers, a renowned platform for underground hip hop, spotlighting authentic voices and raw lyrical talent. You're an award-winning educator and nonprofit leader, also a U.S. Army decorated veteran, and a passionate music technology teacher dedicated to empowering young artists through education and community work. And you're also a published author. Your debut novel, Invasion of the Punk Rockers Who Drink Blood, fuses horror, rebellion, and a coming of age grit into a bold literary statement. And as you mentioned, you've kind of been on a book tour, putting that out there.
All that sounded so much better when you say it.
Well, I try to take the pressure off of the guest having to pitch themselves and tell the world about what they've done. Um,
I appreciate it. It sounds very good when it's all together and just like yeah, it was awesome.
Laid out. Thanks. So, as I mentioned, it's kind of unstructured the way I like to do these interviews. But with the very first question, I go back in time to where were you born and what was life as a kid for Stephen?
So, you know, a lot of people actually don't know I was not actually born in Philadelphia. I
Okay.
was born in Houston.
Oh, wow.
My mom's whole family's from Houston, and my dad's family's actually from France, and they moved there when he was young. And then, yeah, so I was born in Houston, and then we very like almost immediately moved up to Philadelphia. My dad
Okay.
got a job up there, and as like running a big welding shop for they welded like tanks and stuff like that. So,
Uh,
like water tanks, not our military tanks.
okay.
Um,
Gotcha.
and then yeah, so that's where I grew up. But yeah, I mean, I still do have some. My mom now lives back in Houston, so there's some roots there. I've lived in Houston a few times, like after the military and everything, but a lot of people don't know. I don't bring it up too often.
Right on. What type of work did your mom do as a kid?
As a kid, when she was younger, she played professional women's softball.
Oh,
So that
really?
was yeah, that was her thing. Like she was really big in softball. And then after she had me, she didn't do like she worked at Home Depot, you know, she just kind of worked she jumped around like just helping make ends meet. So Home
Right.
Depot, she worked at a doctor's office for a few years as a receptionist, and then she when I think that those are the only two jobs I really remember her having when her and my dad were married. And she got divorced when they got divorced. She married a guy who owned a steel mill, and she
Okay.
worked there until he died
Gotcha.
recently. Yeah, so she she worked at that steel mill for a long time, almost 20 years.
Definitely a woman who wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty.
No, no, my mom is something. Now she's actually a diving instructor in Rotan. Like she splits her year between Houston and Rotan.
Okay.
So they went there on a vacation together, and she loved it, and they ended up buying a house there. So she's there at least 6 months out of the year.
Wow. That's fascinating. That's
Yeah, so
fascinating.
she got me into scuba diving and my brother, and we've both gotten other people into it. It's super fun. I had to stop for a while. I had crazy sinuses. It was hard for me to fly. It was hard for me to dive. It felt like my eyeballs were going to shoot out of my head. And then
Yeah.
I had sinus surgery, and now it's good again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. How about grandparents when you were young? I'm assuming you had some in Houston, but did you also have some in France?
Well, my dad's parents, they moved with him here. They
Okay.
were his adopted parents. He
Gotcha.
doesn't know who his real parents, but they moved here, and I didn't know them very well. I was really young when they died.
Gotcha.
So I didn't know that. I don't know many. He doesn't talk to much of his family,
All
so I
right.
don't know too much about them. I know a couple of them vaguely, but I don't know all of them very well. And then my mom's parents, they just recently passed away when about 5 years ago now. And I knew them very well. They were awesome. My papa, he was a Navy CB. I got the flag up back there.
Okay.
That was his flag.
Yeah.
That was my inheritance right there.
Nice.
So he was a CB, and then he was a mailman for 42 years. So he was a government man his whole life, honestly. And then my grandma, she was a lunch lady for as long as
Okay.
I can remember.
Yeah.
So they both they were just very like lower middle class. They're from a town in Houston called Cloverleaf. If anybody
Okay.
has heard of it, it at once upon a time was a nice area. Now it's pretty rough. Um,
Gotcha.
it's yeah, we lived there when before my daughter was born. And sorry to go off track. I'm all
That's
over
right.
the place. Crazy
No, you're
ADD.
fine.
But my wife and I, we really didn't know what we were doing. We at the time, well, I'm sure we'll get to this point naturally, but there was a time where everything that was going on, the studio was open and a lot of stuff had happened, and I was homeless. So I
Okay.
was between friends' couches, my brother's spare room, or the car. There was a couple nights even stayed in a shelter in Philly, and
Right.
my wife and I, when we got together, we were staying at an Airbnb, and we just didn't know what we were doing. So my grandparents were both very sick. And first we ended up actually moving down to Tennessee. My dad, about 10 years ago, moved to Tennessee.
Okay.
And so we came down here with him, and we were thinking we were going to stay down here and like start something up down here. And then my grandparents were both sick. My grandmother had Alzheimer's, my grandfather had dementia, and they were basically like, "Hey, if you come take care of them, you could stay at the house." So,
Yeah.
we jumped on that, and it was tough, going down there and seeing both of them like that. Like my grandmother didn't recognize me
Yeah.
almost the whole time we were there, and it it was tough, but I'm glad we got that chances to be with them. My grandmother passed pretty quick. She didn't get to meet my daughter. And then my grandfather, we took care of him, and his dementia had really progressed like very seriously to where we went out one night and we came back, all the doors were locked, couldn't get in the house, and I climbed through a window, and he's like crushing up Benadryl and putting them in water and just drinking Benadryl and talking
Oh,
about
wow.
this guy coming to get him on a train, and it was why I've come to find out like Benadryl like make you more loopy than a benzo. Like
Yeah.
it's a serious thing, especially it's like a real problem for elderly people. I didn't know that either, but so we're going through all that. And then, like I said, my daughter was born. I don't even remember what the question was at this point. Now I'm just like reliving all this. Sorry about that. I know we're talking about Houston and my grandparents and all that. But yeah, so we ended up being in that house for a while. But yeah, so my daughter was born, and there was times where we'd have to like go in the center of the house because people are just outside shooting. Like there just always be a shooting in this neighborhood, and it's. I remember going and visiting them as a kid, and it wasn't that bad. And then just progressively, we were there on like Christmas and New Year's, and just go outside, and it's just like like people going crazy out there. So um,
Right, right.
it was an interesting thing to like see, honestly. And it doesn't get like the I don't know. A lot of people think Houston is the bad parts are like the third ward and everything, and they're not great either. I worked in the third ward. That's where I was teaching at a school called Workshop Houston for a few years, and I always thought the third world ward was awesome. Like the people there are great. It's
Yeah, yeah.
great food. Everybody's very nice. Where and people in Cloverleaf are nice too, but it's just it just doesn't even look like the same
It
country,
used to.
honestly. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
yeah. No, I get it. There's a lot of areas where when we were younger, they looked idyllic in a way, and then years later, you go back and visit them, and you're kind of like, what has happened here?
Exactly. It's like, I mean, there's a couple things that are still there. Like when I remember going and visiting as a kid, and there was like on off of I-10, there'd be like these shipping containers that were just full of crap, and you can go like just like a for everyday flea market, and they
Yeah,
would just have crap in there. But I like that kind of stuff. I'm a big flea market, yard sale, junk store kind of guy, and there's still a couple junk stores that are still there, and there's a refresqueria that's still there with like really good like Mexican treats that I love, like the fruit with the chamoy on it and all that stuff. So
yeah,
they still have some of that stuff, but then otherwise it's just like completely different.
yeah,
And Philly's
yeah,
like that too. I mean, we've migrated. I go up all the time. My business is still there, so I'm always up there. But we are
right,
mainly now in Tennessee, and just every time I go up, something from my childhood is gone and it's replaced with some new
yeah,
crazy skyscraper like just like they put up this big mall that has I don't know, Sprouts and Halal Guys and all this stuff. And while it's stuff, some of that stuff I love too. I'm like, oh, Halal Guys over here, cool. I'm good with that. But it's just like, where did all this stuff come from? So
right,
it's weird to kind of watch the world turn. And I mean, I love going up there still and taking my kids. Like, there's a diner my dad used to take me and my brother to called the Terminal, and it's a dumpy little like. And if anybody from the Terminal watches this, don't take this this offense. It's like a dumpy little like building. It's never changed. It's got like three parking spots and it's packed to the gills in there. Like it's hard to get a seat and it's amazing. The same
yeah,
waitresses have been working there for 30 something years, like since I was a
nice,
kid. So I,
yeah,
I remember taking my daughter there the first time. I almost cried. I was just like, you used to be my waitress when I was her age. And, she was like 3. And,
yeah,
she's like, yeah, honey. It's like, real deep smoker's voice.
yeah,
But stuff like that I love, but most of that stuff's gone. A lot of the stuff we used to do as a kids there is gone too. So unfortunately, you don't get to share those memories, but you just got to make new ones.
for sure. As a kid in elementary school, were you one of the kids that would sit towards the back of the class, or were you one of the kids that wanted to be up front and have the teacher paying attention?
Well, I mean, I was always anybody you asked to that I went to elementary school with. I loved attention. I
Okay.
loved it. Anything I could do to bring the attention onto me, I'd do it. So I wasn't ever really sneaky with it. I'd honestly sit wherever and make it about me. But
Okay.
like if you ask my mom, it would drive her crazy. I mean, I know I'm a reason that my parents didn't work because I was just always that way. And I know how frustrating it was for her. And now I see it in like my kids. Like they crave attention 24/7. So I'm getting a little bit of that payback. But
Right on.
yeah, I mean, I'd sit anywhere I'd sit, I'd always have the all eyes in the room on me, just being a goofball or just everything was a joke or starting an argument I always had to have an argument with every teacher about everything if I didn't agree. And early on, I don't know why, but I was very like into politics and I was very into just like a lot of punk rock like ideals. A
Yeah.
couple of my very good friends had older siblings that were already into that kind of stuff. My best friend Chad, his older sister, from the time he's been my best friend since I was 5 years old, and she was already wearing Misfits t-shirts and stuff. So,
Okay. Yeah.
I just seeing that, I'm getting into that. Or my other friend Jordan Gamble, his brother was always wearing like the Germs and other like more they weren't like more obscure, but I guess less mainstream. If you weren't already in the punk, you didn't really like know about Darby Crash and the Germs, I guess. But getting into all that kind of stuff early on and just like really digesting those lyrics, made me not I'd say not every teacher's favorite kid.
Gotcha. Gotcha. You mentioned your brother already. Was that the only sibling you had? Just the
Yeah,
one?
I got just one, my younger brother Randy, who's he's awesome. We've always been, it was growing up too. My mom, when she left, we were pretty young, so it was just like it would be, me, my dad, and him, and then whatever girlfriend I had usually just like lived with us.
Okay.
That started pretty early, so it would always be like the three or the four of us just out doing whatever.
What was the age difference?
4 years, 4
4 years.
years.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. That's my
Right.
guy though. He's a good guy.
Yeah. I would assume that he kind of probably looked up to you in a lot of ways.
I don't. We were very different.
Yeah. First and second child usually are.
Yeah, he is we are in similar fields now. Randy's an incredible videographer. Like he works
Okay.
for a company called Creative Outlook, and they film commercials for PayPal in Vietnam. Like he just did a huge documentary for this guy who has the biggest record collection in the world that premiered at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And
Oh,
like
wow.
so he does huge like video projects. Now he's doing the Eagles official pre and post game show. So
Okay.
he's aw- so we did end up in a similar like entertainment industry, but
Right.
growing up, Randy was like super just active. He was a very, very active kid, which is, I not that I wasn't super, but not this kid. This kid, you turn around and he's like climbing the door frame of every door. Like he's that kid, which now that's my son too. So that was him. He's always getting like hurt, like just I remember he sawed his thumb off in a bike chain and just that was Randy. Like he's had to get his thumb put back on. He had pins in both of his thumbs, falling down some stairs, just always doing crazy stuff. And then he was just like an incredible baseball player.
Okay.
And he was getting looked at by colleges and everything until he started smoking weed. That was then I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to shoot videos. So that's when we
Right.
started hanging out with the skateboarders.
Okay. Nice. Nice. How about you? Did you play any sports as a kid?
Yeah, I played. Basketball was always like my favorite one to play, and I actually played that when I was in the army too for a little bit. And I tried other ones. My joking claim to fame for high school was being a third string quarterback.
Okay.
But throughout I tried other stuff too. I've tried playing just about every sport, but I always was very much more into creative projects early. And
Yeah.
I mean, I love playing like as I got older, I joined like men's leagues and stuff. Me and a couple of my friends and play like men's league basketball. I love that. Like I love playing basketball. I like playing. We even did a dodgeball league, like a trampoline dodgeball league one time, and that was awesome. But yeah, just like doing creative projects kind of always and specifically music because I did other creative stuff. Like I had a tattoo internship and I really was like getting into that and I was doing tattoos and it was just I kind of had a choice of do I pursue the music more or do I kind of go this way? And
Mhm.
the music wins every time. So and it's just always been like that.
Nice. Where do you think that creativity has come from? Because it doesn't seem like you've had a whole lot of familial influence from that area.
Well, when my dad was younger, he was in a band.
Okay.
Um, called Hertz, and I have all their like lyrics and artwork and stuff still like in a
Right.
box. So he was like in, but he didn't go much farther than high school band, with
Gotcha.
doing that. And Honestly, he never taught me how to play guitar. He had an old Hondo that I have now, but he never taught me how to play guitar. I also was unteachable, just being honest. I've never taken lessons in any
Okay.
instrument because I'm just like I am not the most I don't want to say not teachable, but especially at the time, I guess I have like I don't ego problems or something where it's like
Okay.
the way you're showing me, it's just like this is there's got to be a better way here. Let me figure it out on my own. And
Right.
I think I'd probably be farther in life if I didn't have that issue growing up. But I had to learn guitar on my own. I've had to learn drums on my own and everything. Just there just was no other. I don't know. There was no path for me to just sit there and have somebody show me how to do it. But so that was like the only like creative influence that I had family wise. I mean, my dad's a great like drawer. Like he can
Uh-huh.
draw a lot of stuff, so he always was doodling and stuff. I don't know if that is what was the catalyst or not, but yeah, I don't know. Like I said, we just listening to I get from my mom, she always would tell me from like the time I was little, I was like an entertainer. I'd always be trying to entertain everybody.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, we went to a family like gathering at a river one time, and I'm just giving the news report like a reporter, and my grandmother is getting going nuts listening to me, and she's like, "Can somebody change the channel?" And so I changed the channel and started doing it in Spanish. So it's like this is that my mom tells that story all the time, but it's I don't know. I just always liked being in front of people and entertaining them. And I don't think I necessarily knew where I was going to take that because I also was really into like doing plays. So, like, as a
Okay.
kid, I was always doing plays. I was in plays a ton. I thought I was actually going to be an actor, something in
Okay.
movies. That was like where I thought I was going. And then again, once like coming into like punk rock, that's where it just was like, I think I want to do this. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's I guess that's what it was. Like I just kind of always wanted to entertain people, and maybe I didn't have a clear path. The punk rock kind of got me. It hooked me,
Well, it sounds too like you were one of those kids who wanted to figure things out kind of on your own.
and I'm still that way to this day.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
It's not uncommon. It's not
no,
uncommon in the creative community where I have a conversation with somebody that, they just had to figure it out on their own. It was just the way that their brain worked. It was easier for them to function that way.
yeah. Even when you're doing it all wrong or you're taking some
Yeah.
lumps and the failures, I tell my kids, not like my students, not my actual kids, they're too young, but my students, I'm always telling them that the failure is the best thing to learn from. So
Yes.
I will let them now I won't let them like ruin their lives, but if there's something they're doing and I'm watching over their shoulder and maybe they're running a session and they're doing something wrong that's gonna have like a mess up that will be inconvenient and like maybe they have to do something again or tell the artist this and I'll let them do it, even if I'm watching them do it. And then when they get to that point and they realize that they like messed up pretty bad, I'm like, look, this is what happened. They're like, why didn't you tell me? I was like, because if I told you, you could do it again. Now you got
Right.
to tell this guy you're potentially losing this guy's trust. You know, you're never going to do this particular mistake again. And
Yeah.
I think it's such a valuable tool. And I could sit there and give everybody the answers for something, but if you don't practically like experience it, it doesn't compute the same way. At least for me. I mean, I'm sure there are people who can just be like, "Cool, I'll never do that," but I'm not
Right.
that guy.
No, I think that's a great approach, is from my perspective, anyways, because I think that you're giving them an opportunity to recognize, number one, it was a mistake. It wasn't the easier or realistic route to go. And then two, you're instilling them a sense of integrity,
Right.
uh, in terms of working with an artist. Of, hey, look, you got to admit you messed up here. We got to redo this take or redo this section. And I think that's something that is not very common in the music industry, to walk into a session with a studio that is going to not rip you off right away.
Right.
whether it's hours or how much that they charge you for it or whatever, but instilling that bit of integrity into them as working as the engineer or the recording person, or even an artist working with another artist, just that collaborative component where you're instilling that integrity early on I think it's highly valuable. I think it's an honorable thing to be doing.
I agree with you. I mean, that's we really like I go to sleep at night knowing that I've never like screwed anybody over in business.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact too, I've seen it. I won't throw people under the bus, but I've seen plenty of people in this. We've
Oh
next
yeah.
year makes 17 years that we've been open. And then engineering, I've been doing it. That'll make me doing it for like 19 years. And
Hmm.
then just going to studios for 20 plus. So it's
Right.
I've seen the gamut. I mean, one of the first contracts I've ever signed was just a horrible deal, but I was excited, and just I've seen bad contracts. I've seen people get taken advantage of. I've seen studio going into studios and, people burning your time, like talking to you and then just like not giving you, basically wasting your time when then you're on the clock for a conversation,
Yeah.
about the Ninja Turtles or something. And you're like, what the hell is this? Until I met a guy named Vince Ratty, who's an incredible, very well known engineer. He recorded my band Fruit Punch, pretty much our whole discography. And
Okay.
what he's who made me want to engineer. This was like I used to say when I was 12 years old I was going to own a recording studio. That
All
was like
right.
something I always said. But watching Vince work, I think the first time I worked with him I was probably 17 or 8 or 16 or 17. I was like, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. Like, this is awesome. And again, he had a stack of video games and arcade games and he would talk to you. And then at the end of the thing, when it was time to pay up, he'd be like, well, you were here for 10 hours, but we talked for two of them. Setup was 30 minutes. He's like, just give me 7 or 8 hours. And it's like, cool. Like I appreciated that. So
For sure.
seeing that, and his prices were fair too, way more fair for a better product than what we were getting at bigger studios.
Yeah.
So seeing that was like a big inspiration how I wanted to work. And yeah, we kind of took that. We if we're talking to you or whatever like that, you're not on the clock for that. You're on the clock for recording, mixing, mastering, like any kind of actual work towards the product. But you're not on the clock for, if we take a lunch break and we're just hanging out for a little bit, that's you're not on the clock. If you're coming in and maybe I've let people go without paying who weren't just like at the point where they even needed to be to record. Because
Got you.
it's like, you're just maybe like a newcomer, like, hey, this is my first time in the studio, and then they're getting
Right.
frustrated, like hearing themselves in the headphones. We have a Furman box in the booth that you can adjust yourself. You can adjust the music, you can adjust the talk back, you can adjust the volume of your own voice, and it's a learning curve for people if you don't have the experience. So I've seen people
Yeah.
get frustrated with that. I've seen people get frustrated like never hearing their voice before, not understanding the timing and the delivery. So I mean, I really try to teach my guys to coach people through that, but I also try to make sure that they're empathetic towards younger people who or older people who've never been in the studio. It's like a first time. And to, if that situation comes 20 minutes in, if it's just not going anywhere, just being like, hey, do you want to like maybe come out here? Let's talk, give them some pointers and be like, if you want, you can go practice this a little bit more, come back. I'm not going to charge you. Or if you want to keep going, we can. But give them that option, that like kind of buyout option where, from what I've noticed, it's every time I've ever done that, they've either come back or, they've been very thankful for that experience and whatnot. So I don't know. Again, I think as a studio, we might even be farther if I was a slimy music business guy. But I think as a musician too, and a guy who's been screwed over in deals, it just never sat right to me to screw people over.
Yeah. And again, that's the commendable part of it. It's really refreshing to hear you talk like that, even because it's so few and far between. that it's almost to a ridiculous point, anyways.
It is, and this industry is just it changes every day, and
Yeah.
and when we first opened, we built the studio 2008, we opened 2009, and just even from those 2 years, things were changing to where we had to buy different equipment.
Oh yeah.
When we first opened, we had a big board, and we were very much like all analog, and then very quickly we kind of, and still to this day, we do a hybrid setup. It's part digital. We have the converters, A to D, D to A converters, and then the rest is like analog preamps and whatnot. But prior, we were going to go all analog, and it wasn't how sound at that time was really being recorded. And we just learned very quickly that this industry is constantly changing and you got to kind of evolve with it. But I think where people go astray is they feel like every time something changes, they have to try to take advantage of other people to make their money back.
Yeah.
And that's never been really my philosophy in this business at all. I'm kind of like, I feel like if we all eat, or it basically, if I can help you out and you can eat off of it, then I'm going to eat in return, because
Exactly.
you're going to either be a client for me forever, or you'll be somebody. We have a lot of interns. We are always working with schools doing internships and whatnot. So it's like, if you're a good client, I'll give you to these interns, and they do free sessions or very cheap sessions, and just different things like that. I try to do to make people know that we're not just out here trying to just make money off of them. And
Right.
I've seen it too many times. I've just seen it too many times. And again, it's happened to me too many times to just do it to other people.
For sure. For sure. If we're looking back at elementary school, getting to that age of 11, 12 years old, where you mentioned you first met up with this engineer, did you have any teachers around that time that were recognizing something within you that they wanted to potentially encourage rather than looking at you as like the disturber or disruptor in the class?
I so around then, I think my teacher was that's like fourth or fifth grade. I think her name was Miss Whiteborough. And she knew I was like, she had come to see me in some plays. I wasn't in a band yet. And I always was really good at like school work.
Okay.
So I was like, I never had a problem with like the work. I just had a problem sitting still, and it just didn't hold my attention. So, and she
Yeah.
knew that. And she was a person who definitely yelled at me a lot. But she knew that I had the potential to do something. But once I got into high school, or middle school, I guess it would be. In middle school, I was just like, at first I was pretty lost, I'll say.
Okay.
I was really into music. I didn't really feel like I cared about school at all. At this point, I'm playing in bands. And then, my parents got divorced towards, yeah, my parents had got divorced, and just a lot of life changes. And
Yeah.
I really just I didn't care. It was like the last thing I cared about. So I was fighting, I was selling pills in school, just doing a lot of stuff that wasn't conducive to being in school. So,
Okay.
I got expelled, and I got sent to one of those alternative schools.
All right.
It's called Genesis. And in there, though, is where I finally really start getting that encouragement from other teachers. We had a behavioral manager. Basically, like, this is the school where all the kids who can get out of control, so they're allowed to. We used
Right.
to
Right.
we used to say grip you up and, like, put you in a
Yeah.
headlock and throw you on the ground. So it was one of those schools. But our behavioral manager, he's the guy he was the enforcer, basically. He was really encouraging, and I had started like a little like fake record label with some of the kids at the school that we would like
Okay.
do music and stuff, and like record them on a cassette tape. I didn't know what we were doing, but so he was encouraging of that. And then there was a teacher, Miss Edwards, and she took me to my first punk rock show, like at
Oh,
this
really?
venue, the Trocadero. I'm like probably 12 at that point. And that was a very formative moment. It was me, her, and another teacher, and two other students, and we all went to this like punk rock show. And Then after that, the whole program reshifted and they renamed it from Genesis to AIM. And then they've pretty much wiped the slate of everybody that was there as a teacher and brought in new people. And there was a teacher named um, Miss A, and she was awesome. This was like
Okay.
my favorite. I still talk to her. She actually bought a copy of the book.
Nice.
She was awesome and literally like talked me off the ledge countless times. Used to drive me home even though she'd get in trouble for it because I got kicked off the bus. I wasn't allowed to take the bus. I lived
All right.
very far. I had to walk. So she started driving me home because I got into like a fight on the bus or something. I was yelling. I can't even remember exactly, but I was never allowed to take the bus. So she would drive me home to her detriment. And again, that was another formative thing. Like she was very supportive of the music, and she had got me in this music program that was like all the alternative schools in the Philadelphia like area. So it was like Philadelphia and the surrounding suburbs and all that stuff. They all had, there was a bunch of them that we would all play each other in sports and would play each other in whatever, but there was a music thing. So she had got me into that and I got to go one other kid from my school, it was like two kids from her school got to go to this recording studio and do a song. We each got to do one song. And that was my first like real recording studio experience, I guess. And I did a song called Factory Lines. And it was like a really like hardcore punk, just lyrically everything. It was very like political, and but it was like probably the best song on the whole thing. Not to toot my own horn, but everybody knew it. You know, I got to play all the instruments on it, and they made a CD. I still have the CD too that had every
Oh,
single
cool.
song on it that everybody did, and yeah, that was like my first recording studio experience. That was very formative. I was like, I loved it, and I loved that the CD got went out. Like all the kids got copies of it, and
Right.
it was just like, yeah, I liked the attention from it. And then she also really encouraged, like I was always big in like creative writing stuff. So
Okay.
I had won an award for like a short story that I did there and all that. So then the whole program recycled again, and it was all new people again. And I had gotten expelled from there as well. Like I got the I ended up getting in a fist fight with our principal, who I love this guy. His name is George Nardone. I still talk to him too. He's a good dude. And thinking back on it, like I was in the wrong, you know.
Okay.
But I mean, him and the behavioral manager, they kicked my ass. You know, I beat me up pretty good. But I every time they'd be like, "All right, are you calm? Can we let you go?" I'd get up and try to grab the fire extinguisher off the wall and hit him with it. It was rough, you know, it was a rough time. But so from that point, I got kicked out of there and I had an opportunity to go to another school online or go on tour. And it was a no-brainer. My dad signed me out of school for good, and I was on the road. And
And that's at what age? 17?
that was
16?
16.
16. Okay.
Yep.
So your introduction into punk based off of friends that are hanging around you, t-shirt impressions that are capturing your attention, and
Right.
then your teacher taking you to one of these shows.
And I think that show, if I recall correctly, it was at the Trocadero, and I think it was like One Man Army and Rooney. It wasn't
Okay.
like the craziest, you know, it wasn't like Dead Kennedys or anything. It was pretty, you know, it was why I believe that was a show. One Man Army, Rooney, and somebody else. I don't remember.
Right. So where I was going is that punk is usually counterculture scene, highly filled with what some would consider outcasts or those that feel completely outcast. What was the state of mind, if you can recall, at that time where you felt more included in that environment than in everything else?
Well, you know, that's interesting because like I never necessarily felt like an outcast.
Okay.
I always have been like able to get along with anybody. as a kid, I had a ton of friends in a ton of different groups. It was pretty easy for me to kind of travel between groups. And of course, I
Right.
had my really good friends that were, I'm still friends with to this day. And then I have other friends that are still like occasionally talk to, but I didn't have a lot of trouble switching between groups.
Okay.
So but one thing with punk that was like, that grabbed me was it was an amazing outlet to just let out some aggression.
Yeah.
And, my mom, she always called me everybody's advocate because anytime I felt like somebody was getting wronged,
Yeah.
to my own personal detriment, I had to say something, be this
Okay.
to a teacher, to somebody who's going to want to fight me at that point, to a cop, whatever. If I heard somebody I felt was being wronged, I had to do something about it. And again, that not always the best thing for me. But so that was something else that really appealed to me. And definitely because of some of that stuff. And, I did like growing up, a lot of my friends were like kind of out of like I'm a big nerd. Like I still love the Ninja Turtles. I still love my son being into this stuff now is like my favorite thing. Like he's so into Ninja Turtles right now. He's 2.5, and he's
Yeah.
like, he saw a real box turtle the other day that and it had orange spots on it, and he's like, Mikey. I was like, yes, yes. So it's like that's great. But I was probably into that stuff way more than any of my friends in as a teenager. Like
Yeah.
I had my whole walls were like action figures I got at yard sales, just
Okay.
on shelves, just like I still so that was one thing too where I might not have connected with some people off of that. And also like there was a really big period of like I said when my parents got divorced where I was at this alternative school, so I was missing out on like a lot of the friends that I grew up with in regular school, and
Right.
um, and there really wasn't any like punk rock kids at that school. It was mainly like a lot of kids really into like rap, which helped me more get into that scene. I'd already started getting into it, but that also introduced me to a lot of other stuff. But yeah, so I think that those kind of are all the reasons I really got into it. I did feel more isolated once I went there, even though I still saw everybody outside of school.
Yeah.
It was just not being with them all the time put me in that kind of mind frame. I definitely was like angsty, like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
it's me against the world. And that's honestly why like hardcore punk rock, like Minor Threat, Gorilla Biscuits, Chain of Strength, like that kind of stuff really spoke to me the most. When I was first getting into everything, I did have a little pink mohawk and
Okay.
the studs and the chains and all that stuff and patched up jackets. And then, once I started really getting into more like the hardcore scene pretty early, I kind of was like, I really like that this doesn't have a uniform. The
Right.
hardcore kids are wearing like jeans and a band t-shirt or gym shorts and a band t-shirt. And that's how I like to dress to this day.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. That was the only thing about punk that never wasn't my favorite thing. It's like I felt like if everything's about not conforming, but if you don't have a mohawk and studs or Liberty spikes and patches, and you're not punk rock enough to be here or whatever. And
Right.
I bought into it for a year or two, but it just it's like why can't I just wear shorts and a t-shirt? Like this is weird. So
Yeah.
it feels very like conformative here. I don't know what's
You're
going
right.
on, but yeah. So it just that's where I really like found the most appealing was being right there. It's like I really genuinely felt like I could be myself and just that was important to me, like not compromising my character. That's what I
Yeah.
do like about like at least the punk rock lyrics are like I'm not you are yourself and you either take me or leave me and that just really grabbed me.
Yeah. With being that young, and obviously you've got some kind of talent going on, because if you're still in high school and you're getting offered a record deal and opportunity to go out on tour, how is that? How was that? How do I want to say it? The timeline of when you started in the band to getting signed, how much amount of time was there to where you're getting recognized right off the rip almost of, hey, they've got something, The sound is there, the look is there. Let's do something with these guys.
Well, it started early. There, it was a few steps that led to it. You know, the first band we did, we were called 3 p.m., and it stood for three punk musicians, and we were absolutely garbage. Nobody knew how to play their instruments, and we just thought that was okay. I was like, well, you don't have to be good to play punk rock. I
Yeah.
actually played bass in that band. So I begged my dad for a bass for Christmas. I actually literally have it behind me over here somewhere. I was like in Austin. I've had that thing forever. It's been my favorite bass. The action's super high. It's crappy. I love how it sounds. Um, but so I got that bass. I had no idea what I'm doing. I'm doing like one finger power chord like type playing, and it's just so bad. And then we started. After that, we the band that became Sxaks, and that's where my name comes from.
Okay. Yeah.
We were first called like Narcotics Division, and then we were so many different. The worst name we ever had was the Monkey Porn Hour. There was just like so many different
Yeah.
names, and then finally Jordan, whose brother was influential in me being here in the first place. His handwriting was so bad, and I'm reading these lyrics he wrote because I was playing guitar and he was singing, and I'm like, Jordan, what is this? Sxaks? And we're laughing. I'm like, Sxaks? What is this? And he's just like, and the word was actually stuck. But I'm like, what is this word? And we had just gotten like a family computer, and he's cracking up, and we're cracking up, and we look up Sxaks, and it was like it said like we found stuff that's saying it was like a dead snake or something, something
Okay.
like that. So that became the name, and from that point, I was really good at getting us on shows we had no business being on, like with
Really?
opening. Oh yeah, I just like we would be opening crazy like They used to do a festival at FDR Skate Park every year. Anybody from Philly would know about this. We were on every single show from like 2000, what I don't know, three, four, five, six. Like we were just playing a ton.
Okay.
Um, and I remember our last show was even a big show. We did two shows in one day. We did one in Maryland and came right back. And there was a venue in the Rotunda on 40th and Walnut, and it was like the Low Budgets and a whole bunch of other like bigger local bands at the time. And we were the opener. And then I just announced that we were like done. Nobody in the band even knew we were breaking up but me because I was frustrated with the situation that happened earlier that day. But the name, after that, I went into a band called American Holocaust, and that was like more of like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with like power violence, but it's very fast, short songs, just
Right.
like
Yeah.
very, very, like very fast, short songs. And then after that, I started a band called Gorzilla, and we were like a theme thrash band.
All
So
right.
we were Gorzilla, the bastard son of Godzilla, and our singer would like come out naked, painted green, and we'd pour like I played drums in that band. We'd pour paint all over the drums, so there's paint going everywhere. And but yeah, we were just a theme band, and that was where things started. Like really, like everybody knew some of the other bands, but we were always just that band that opened up shows. But we were everywhere, so it's like okay,
Right.
the associations there, and then American Holocaust was better musically, so people were paying a little bit more attention, but that's more niche. You're not
Yeah.
not everybody's into that kind of stuff. And then Gorzilla was more like had more of an appeal, I think, for a lot of people. It was fun live. I don't want to say we were guar or anything, but it was like, it was fun. And then after that was when I started Fruit Punch. Um,
Okay.
and that's the band that really took off. It was like me and I met this person Drake on another Philly like shout out. There's a thread called Philly Shreds. It was a website, and people would just go on there and post all sorts of stuff. And somebody there's a genre in hardcore called queercore, and somebody had asked, Drake had asked, like, had anybody ever wanted to start a queercore band? And I posted, I always wanted to start a queercore band called Fruit Punch. And we literally the next day we were practicing. And it was like, we were a two-piece at first. I played drums and Drake played guitar. And we cut a demo, and that started getting crazy attention, shockingly. Like, we cut it Drake had like a double speed tape recorder that had
Uh-huh.
like four channels, I think. So we did like a
Okay.
two drum mics, and then one on the guitar, and then one for vocals, and then we overdubbed the vocals. So I played drums, Drake played guitar, and we both sang. And we cut a demo, and that demo was called Loud, Obnoxious, and Possibly Gay.
That's
And
classic.
yeah, it was actually really good. People just, like I said, we start getting crazy show offers. We're going all over the place. And that's when I met my business partner and his friend from a band at the time, Jordan. And Jordan was drumming in Ethan's band, and Ethan's my co-founder of Marston House and all that stuff. And they came over with some girls that we were all hanging out with, and they just like sat around. And I hated Ethan when I met him. I was like, this guy sucks, because he was just real quiet. And you could tell I just talk. So I'm
Yeah.
just, when somebody's just real quiet, I'm like, what is with this dude? Like, you're just sitting in my house, we're practicing, you're just not saying a word. But Jordan was super cool. And I was like, Jordan, I think I could teach you to play drums. Like, I was like, I think I could teach you to play a blast beat. I could teach you to play like a D beat, and I think you should play drums in our band. So I stole him from their band, taught him how to
Okay.
play drums a little more, and then the three of us went and we just went crazy off that demo, and that's where we got the offer from QCR. They were like, "Hey, look, we really are very interested in signing you guys." And we're young. I didn't even care what the contract said, just being
Right.
honest. It was
Yeah.
like, yes. And I mean, they were paying for studio time, they're paying for all the albums to get cut, they were gonna fly us around. So they first, I won't skip ahead. So then we signed that deal. We cut the our first album, Freak Parade, and recording wise, this is before we actually recorded with Vince. This we recorded with a singer of a band called Common Enemy. His name's Pat, and that album, they printed 500 copies, and we were going on a 4-day tour locally, and we sold out of them on the tour.
Nice.
It was like, and we asked the label, we're like, could we get more? And they're like, no. They didn't want to print anymore. Yeah, I know. So we were just like, what are we gonna do? We don't have any more albums. So this is when Blockbuster was going out of business, and there was a
Okay.
Blockbuster close to us. So we like broke into their dumpster and took about, I don't know, 2000 just blank DVD cases, and we bootlegged our own album. We made different like art,
Nice.
like a variant art, and we burned all the CDs. So now fast forward to where we're about to go on tour. I'm like, yeah, I'm dropping out of school. And the tour was, so now at this point, we were already signed, and we decided to bring in a second guitarist. So we
Okay.
met a guy named Pork, and brought him in because I always, on the recordings, I played two guitar tracks. So we wanted the live show to be a better experience.
Yeah.
And brought that guy in, and the label kind of was like, this is a whole nother person we got to pay for and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but it's gonna be better. So we brought Pork in, and they were doing a tour called Pass the Torch Tour. And uh it was an incredible experience. Like, it was my first like tour that big. I've been doing like small East Coast,
Right.
maybe down to Virginia, but they flew us down. We flew into Portland and did like the whole West Coast. They
Oh, wow.
rented. All we had to do was bring guitars and drumsticks. They rented all the other equipment. They had a bus driver. The vehicle was covered. Every
Yeah.
day we were in a hotel room or at a venue. Somebody let us stay there.
Yeah.
It was just an amazing, like, very high scale experience. And there was other bands on that tour too. It was like, I want to say 4 or 5 bands total on this whole thing. One of them,
Okay.
this band Pariah Piranha, and they're awesome. They're kind of like Queens of the Stone Age, kind of like very like muddy, just grungy, just super stoner rock kind of awesome
Yeah.
band. But it was the whole label roster.
Okay.
And we went down there with all of the label actually didn't touch any of our merch like cut, but we went down there. We were kind of like crazy with the merch. Like, My girlfriend at the time used to make us, we called them condom pocket pillows. She screen printed our logo, which was like a fist with fruit on the knuckles,
Okay.
and then it had a little condom pocket on there that so that we sold. We used to sell the crap out of those. And then bandanas where she'd take a green and a pink one, cut them in half, and sew them together. And just we had a stencil that you could come to our table for $5. We'd just stencil your shirt that you're wearing, and
Okay.
we'd have lines out the door with kids coming and getting that stencil, you know.
Nice.
So and then we had shirts, the bootlegs, we had a ton of merch. But yeah, that tour was just like it was amazing, like just everything about it. And we got super close with everybody. Like the label was awesome, honestly. Like they really took care of us on that whole journey. But yeah, so I guess I don't know what to answer that whole thing to answer your question about like I think because of putting in the work I did for all those years, people started seeing like, yeah, I think there is some potential. And then once, even my dad said like Fruit Punch was the best band I was in before, every time I joined something, it was like, well, that's the best band you've done so far. But Fruit Punch
Right.
was just like we were tight. We had great chemistry and just people loved it. So yeah, I guess it translated. We had funny thing, we got discovered off of MySpace off that demo. Yeah,
Nice. Okay.
yeah, that was really when that can't happen these days, but at that
Yeah.
time that was happening a lot. So
Right.
shout out to Tom, I guess his name was, right?
Exactly. Tom from my. Oh, that guy.
That guy.
He was in everybody's friends list.
Yeah, he was your first friend.
Yeah. The one of the things I want to highlight here because not it, it's not completely common for bands to think of this or be as creative as you guys were with your merch. Now, pretty much at this point across the industry, merch is one of the key places where you can make your money.
Oh yeah.
And for you guys to be thinking of that early on, and also thinking of the creative elements of we can just spray paint a stencil on the shirt they already have. That there is profit margin scenarios jumping through the roof.
Right, yeah. I mean it was. I mean we stole the cardboard and we just cut it to the side. So
Right. So the creativity there is amazing to me at that age and thinking that ingenious in the way of, hey, we're just going to make as much money as we can any way possible in order to keep our name out there, keep things moving along. Whereas the labels, they're doing their thing with making sure that we're staying overnight in a good place, getting us to the next venue, so on and so forth. But the mindset from their point of view of not producing any more albums, that seemed a little bit strange when I heard you say that. Did you get an understanding of why they decided to not do that
I think because that they already had invested so much in not just us but
in
four
the
other
travel and
bands.
lodging? I
Yeah,
got you.
yeah, and the travel and again the tour we sold the I think that the plan was we'd have more albums for the tour. I don't think
Okay.
anybody thought we were going to sell out of them at uh, you know, four
Right.
day.
Yeah.
We were touring with a band, Broken Frequency was this band, and they were, a little bigger than us at the time. And we were the opener. So I don't think anybody thought we were going to go out there and kill it like we did.
Yeah.
But it happened. And again, but they were gearing up for this tour. There's flights, there's all the lodging, the food for everybody. Everybody had everybody got a stipend as well every day.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's like I just think that at that time, now CDs you can get them made for $1 a CD, and at that time it was way more expensive in the early 2000s. So I just think that they thought the investment on it. And I remember talking to Marlene, who's awesome. I talked to her. This album's not available like to stream, Freak Parade, because it is old. You know what I mean? Like they just never. So I talked to Marlene recently because now, I have a label that's through Sony Orchard. And I was like,
Okay.
what would you think about doing a re-release, like a co-release? We could do it as like a joint venture. And she
Yeah.
was like, maybe, we'll talk about it. And they actually, I think, are like, they took a pause. I noticed for years they didn't have any artists, and I just saw recently that they are picking up more artists again. So yeah, I'm going to approach her again about maybe re-releasing it. I was thinking about maybe even doing a vinyl run because that's the
Yeah.
only project we did that didn't do vinyl either. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, but I get it now. I think as a younger guy, we were kind of frustrated, like, well, we sold out these CDs. Why don't we get some more CDs? But the
Right.
bootlegging ended up working out for us.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
it was super cool too. It was like people who already had the album bought the bootleg because it was a completely different cover. Jordan, our drummer, who was also later became like a fairly famous drag queen and is
Okay.
also now an incredible tattoo artist, drew the whole thing. Jordan, one of the best artists I've ever met in my life, just drew drew the album, the cover for Freak Parade as well, but also drew the bootleg. And so if you had Freak Parade but you didn't have the bootleg, a lot of people bought those too because it was just so cool. It was like a
Yeah.
comic variant. Um,
Okay.
so it worked out for us, but yeah, I think that was really what it came down to. Is just like there was so much, and again, talking to Marlene at the time, she had told us that it was like they wanted to just do a limited run. And I guess it made it like more special or something, but and it did. Like she was 100% right on it. I just needed to 20 years to to really realize that
Yeah.
that's why you were the leader of the label. Like you were making a good decision. So it worked
Right.
out for us.
Again, though, I want to highlight the fact that you guys are creating your own stuff and you're creating variations of it, whereas that hasn't really become super popular until I would say probably within the last 8 years of where bands are creating like limited runs of
Oh
just a
yeah.
vinyl, a
Yeah.
limited run of a vinyl of a certain color, different things like that. And you guys are thinking of this way back then. And I think that again, it's the forward thinking on your part and the band's part to set yourselves out away from everybody else in terms of what you're doing so you can generate this income flow.
Yeah, I mean we needed I felt like I had a lot to prove as a kid, especially dropping out of school to do this. And Drake also was a little bit older than we were. I think Drake was 25 when we met.
Gotcha.
So I'm a teenager, and Jordan's a year younger than me. Yeah, Jordan actually missed graduation to go on this tour.
Okay.
Or something, yeah. So it was
Yeah.
like, or something like that. They was like the end of the year or something, like to go on that tour. Jordan had to miss it, which he didn't care. But
Yeah.
so we kind of just knew we all had something to prove.
Yeah.
So that's we had to get creative with the stuff, and we were already doing all that merch. Again, punk rock bands, especially like seeing like bands like the Misfits, where you go to the Misfits shows and they have freaking Misfits toilet paper and they have like air fresheners and all this stuff. And I remember seeing them. I think it was like the lineup was like Marky Ramone, Jerry Only, and Robo or somebody on drums, and it was like they were basically like a super group of Ramones, Misfits, and Black Flag members, and they just
Yeah.
had so much merch, and they also had some Ramones merch and some Black Flag stuff too, and it was like, and they all had solo projects, so they had merch for that. Their freaking merch booth was like half the venue long, and it was like, okay, and I know that everybody has their thoughts on that particular lineup of the band, and that's fine. That was after they kicked Michael Graves out. And yeah, but seeing that, I was like, huh. And they made so much money off of it. And
Yeah.
again, it's like I'd rather make my money doing that than overcharge for a ticket. And none of our merch we sold like crazy prices. Like we never sold like CDs more than $10. Like my thoughts, like if I can get this into as many people's hands as possible, then I win. Like more people are going to think about it, more people will buy it. Where
Yeah.
other, I'd see other bands selling their CDs and shirts for 20, $30. It's like now a kid who's coming in there who maybe only has $20, it
Right.
has to wrestle with all he's going to get is either one shirt or one CD, where it's like you could come with $20 and from us you can get a CD, you can get a pillow, and you can get your shirt stenciled. You know what I mean? You can get all
Right.
this
Yeah.
stuff. So that was like our thing. And we undercut everybody's prices. And even after that big tour, we did it. We opened for Common Enemy on a pretty big run. We did like East Coast down in some of the South. And uh yeah, we did the same thing. I mean, those guys, I remember being like frustrated watching us because, they were a huge band at that time. And we're just like this other little band. And
Yeah.
I knew them because they're Pat, who recorded our first project, he left the band to pursue audio engineering. And
Okay.
I went and auditioned to actually take his place in their band. And I wrote, me and one other guy, Gary, we were like the finalists, and I wrote one of their songs, Pac-Man Fever. They still like were performing that song with Gary, but they ended up going with Gary. And me and him were buddies, and like I said, we went on that tour, and they would get mad because it would just be the same thing, like out the door. I remember the first show we played at this venue called Championship in Harrisburg, and that was like the opener for the tour. And I'm
Okay.
talking like before this, like literally out the door, kids coming to get stenciled. You know what I mean?
Nice.
And we would sell the stencil, even if we sold out on merch, we always had the stencil.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just like that was a huge thing that we were doing, and it just uh they would people other bands would be so frustrated with it, which I never got. It's like just make a stencil then.
Exactly.
Just do the same thing.
Do the
But
same thing.
yeah,
Exactly.
people get so mad. Like I literally remember getting pulled aside by this one of them, I think Justin, and just being like, "Yo, you're killing us on, with this. Like, we want to sell some stuff too." And they also, but watching them, seeing them a bunch of times, is they had a ton of merch. It inspired me. They had more. Our merch was very DIY. Like we made a lot of our stuff,
Yeah.
and their merch was very like
Polished.
professional.
Yeah.
What I mean? And
Gotcha.
it cost professional prices where
Right.
our patches were all handmade. We had really cool patches. They were handmade. We did them for $1 a piece. Some other people had really nice patches and they're $5. Or
Yeah.
we had like we had the shirts. We also had actual screen printed shirts, but we made the screens, and me and Jordan like literally screen printed every single shirt. So it's
Yeah.
like we could still sell them for $10. It's like
Yeah.
10
Exactly.
bucks or $5 get stenciled. And then, the pillows, same thing. They were like $10 and they were literally me and that girl, her name was Morgan. We had started a company called A Few Pillows More. Like a
Nice.
few dollars more, a fistful of dollars, that whole thing. And it was like all we were doing was making condom pocket pillows. But Fruit Punch was like the main. So like I was kind of like leasing out the pillows to my own band.
Right.
She would sew them and I would sell them. That was the thing. But even still there was just like fabric we would go get at wherever. There was a store called Jomar that sold incredibly cheap fabric and junk. And then we would just stuff them, sew them up, sew a little extra pocket on them, and that was it.
Yeah.
Screen print the logo, and that was the whole thing. So we just always did that kind of stuff. I really like doing that in that band. And it is a lot more work, but it's like I think like the kids, especially the kids, they always loved it. Like all the like
Yeah. Yeah.
people there. So again, I kind of like went off on a tangent and lost the question. So my bad.
No, that's all right. It went in the direction I wanted it to. The From my perspective, again, and me being in Metro Detroit and seeing bands come through here like crazy every year, one of the things that I'm seeing with the acceptance and the want for your products, your merch, was almost because of the fact that it was DIY. And it's also a little bit more punk to be doing it that way than it is having it done by a screen printer or an embroidery shop or anything like that, or order 1,000 patches from some Chinese company or promotional
Right.
products company or whatever, right? So I think it played into, again, this is me just as an outsider looking at you and looking at what you guys are saying and doing. It's, from my perspective, it's even more punk than the guys that you were touring with. So it
Right.
was more appealing from that perspective. It's like, now these guys are really down and dirty in it.
No, I agree with you. And I felt like that. I
Yeah,
felt, also we would never, even when we made the transition from being the opener on tours to being the headliner on the tour, I
yeah,
never I never left the shows early. We always hung out with people after the shows, and I saw many times I saw bands that we were
oh,
touring with would just like dip or go. And if there was a actual venue and not a house, it'd be in the green room, or
right,
and it's just like I never really got that. I liked hanging out with people. I made so many friends, like, and people we met on tours would sometimes, if we lost a member of the band, because eventually the band, Drake eventually left. Drake was like, "Hey, look, this is awesome, but I gotta have health insurance." And we're like, "Okay, that's fair. You are older than us, like you need health insurance. I get it." So a guy we met from touring, this dude Joe, he was in uh oh man, what was that band called? I can't even remember what his band was called, but we met him on tour and he ended up filling in for Drake. And then we met other people that would fill in different spots. And it was like, that was just all a product of like hanging out with people at these shows and not just leaving. And I
right,
think we got to a point where I think people wouldn't have been mad if we left. That there was like
right,
that period where it was like that we got to that point, but that just never was us. Like I was never above even sleeping at somebody's house that we met on tour and just hanging out and crashing. Like that just never, we never really lost that, which I think was cool, but it did also have its downside too. It was very exhausting. I definitely get why some of those bands, it's very tiring to be on the road for 6 months and
yeah,
every night you're hanging out with people and every night it's like, when we did that California tour, one of my most memorable things was we met these kids who were just like from California. They saw us from the internet. They were so hype on us. They came out to the show and they just wanted to like party with us. So, we went to our hotel room and the pool was closed. So we had a hotel party and we just had the bathtub running and people would just take turns like sitting in the bathtub. And but it was fun. Like it was a great time. And then we all on that same tour, I think in LA, we all went and got the fruit punch. You probably can't even see it. We call it the banana fist. We all got that in some
okay,
guy's basement who didn't even speak English. And it was just like, with some other random kids that ended up giving us a ride because the tour left us. They went to the next city because we stayed and did that. And it was like, oh, we need a ride. So they gave us a ride. And so it's just those experiences that you have, like being out with the people and not just like being so quick to run away. I would
yeah,
never trade them, but I definitely do understand. I don't fault anybody anymore for being like, all right, this is tiring. We've been doing it for years. Yeah, we're
yeah,
just gonna go hang out in the green room until this is over, or just leave and have somebody who just sells merch. So I don't fault anybody for that anymore. But I, even to this day, like I, I'm out there with the people. Like I want to hang out. Like
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I think it's a good example too for the audience, even young artists and musicians that are out there that are, whether they're in a band or they're in solo, creating community around what you're doing and the music that you're putting out will take you to places that just being on a label, a lot of times you won't get as far.
I
Um,
agree.
you can get caught up with a label and sidelined for huge periods of time just because they've got somebody else who's hot at the moment,
Right.
right? So again, your guys' ingenuity and willingness to engage with the people that were coming to your shows, creating that community element, again, another punk rock aspect that comes into play that I think is, it's a teachable moment for creatives that are out there. If you can start thinking of doing your stuff the way that Steve is talking about his band has done their stuff, it, the creativity the connectedness, I think it will propel individuals a lot farther than what they may think that is possible.
No, I agree with you. I think just like with everything in life, there is a balance.
Yeah.
And I do think that, like I've said a couple times already, maybe we would have got a little farther if we didn't just only rely on ourselves to do a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
Even not counting, of course, the label who was great to us. Like I'm not, but we even after that, all of our tours were still very DIY once we left the label and we went on our own. And our last tour was a huge tour. It was called the Bro Punch tour. It was with another band called the Bros, and I played drums in that band, so we were the opener, and then I got from that band and went and played. That
Holy cow.
yeah, so that was the band that I actually took Jordan from Ethan's band, and Jordan what didn't have any interest in doing both, so
Right.
I was like, yeah, I'll do it. At that time, I was in I can't even tell you how many bands I was in. There was a band called the Jurgovs. There was I was playing in a band called the Heels, which was in the 80s. There was a big hardcore band from Philly called the Pagan Babies, and they started a new band in the 2000s called the Heels with the drummer from the Bouncing Souls.
Okay.
He left the band, and then I went in as the drummer. And so I was doing that band, Fruit Punch, the Jurgovs, the Bros, just any. I was in another band called Jam Band Hardcore, and we were literally just like uh, we were if like Fish was a hardcore band, so it was like it was bad though, like it was a kind of a joke kind of thing. Then I was in a band called Papa Bear, which was like a folky project, which I'm about to put that album out now. I revitalized the whole thing, and it's a solo project now. But and then I was just in so many bands. Like I like to occupy my time so much that
Right.
I if I didn't have something to do that day, I'd just get into trouble. So it was like,
Okay.
let me just be in a million bands. But again, it was like if things if we would have did things different, even these other tours post label, gotten some better merch, got maybe things would have been a little bit different. But I wouldn't change anything, but like
Sure.
I'm just for the audience, it is a balance. Like if you can't, if you have the opportunity to get some help, or if there is something you could do, there's so many tools now that just weren't available then, that if you
Yeah.
can use them to your advantage. And now again, like I was saying, like CDs are so cheap, it's actually cheaper for you to get CDs printed than it is to bootleg CDs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can get them for, I know if you go to like Atomic Press, sometimes they'll have sales and it's like 70 cents a CD for just a jacketed case. And
Yeah.
it's you can't really beat it. At that time, I think we probably blank CDs were still kind of expensive. So even
Yeah.
bootlegging, it still costs some money. So yeah, I mean, it's great to do all that. It's great to like do everything, but also, just try to pay attention to some of the other options.
Yeah. With doing all of these things, being on the road as much as you are, and being in each one of these different bands, the environment, I imagine, at a point may get a little bit out of hand. Now, you mentioned earlier on in your like junior high years, you're selling pills.
Yeah, for sure.
Did some of that stuff still carry on over into tour life?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there was definitely times that were hard. Again, it was me and my brother and my dad. And
Yeah.
my dad was he was always working. Like we had a great childhood because of that. But there was times where the lights were shut off or the
Okay.
water and stuff. So there'd be times where I'd take it upon myself to try to get some uh outside money if there wasn't a tour going down. And usually, like, I really tried to take tour money and either reinvest it in the band or put some aside for the studio because I knew the studio was coming.
Yeah.
And especially once me and Ethan really like hit it off, it was like, okay. And once I was like, I actually do like this guy. Remember, I hated him at first, but then I was like, you want to start the studio with me? But yeah, there was times throughout my life where I would sell whatever. I've had some pretty dark moments.
Okay.
Stuff that I'm definitely not like proud of. But it started, like I said, started with the pills, selling those. And then throughout, I remember my girlfriend, she was in photography school, so she could get like unlimited little picture canisters for the film.
Yeah.
And that was like our thing. We were selling weed in those little canisters and stuff like that. But it was like kind of cool. We were trying to do something. See, even in the even in that stuff, we were trying to be creative.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was plenty of times where I kind of, again, growing up in Philly, and I was exposed to some not great people. So
Yeah.
there was a part of me that, I kind of like was torn because a part of me, I always wanted to be like this hero. And then part of me, I kind of like being the bad guy. So it's
Yeah.
like, it was a really hard, and I talk about this a lot, but I feel like as like a creative person, you kind of can have these points where you have to be on, and
Hmm.
my persona of Steve Sxaks is me. It's me, but it's amplified by 100. Like
Yeah.
the Steve Sxaks everybody knows is very loud and boisterous, and just like whenever you see me, like when I host the ciphers, I'm like, it's Steve Sxaks, the most beautiful man in the world, James Dean 2015. Like I've been saying all these things for so long, and I'm the Reed Richards of Philly hip hop, and
Yeah.
I got 3 million things that I could just come up with off the top of my head that I would say, and it's like while that is like me, being very cocky and everything, it's amped up so much, and sometimes if you're on too long, especially if you're on tour,
Yeah.
you kind of get like lost in who you are. And so already having that like dichotomy of like wanting to be this good guy and being the bad guys like is one thing, but then also throwing that in the mix, it really can like who am I? So
Yeah.
it's like even with eventually joining the army, like nobody saw that coming, by the way. It was like who? Like what? Like if you listen to like some of the Fruit Punch stuff, we had songs called like Red Zone, Blue Zone that were about FEMA camps, and it was very like it was a shocker. But we can get into that in a minute. But that was one thing. That was like me kind of for fulfilling that hero arc. But
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
there was times on tour like I never was scared. While I loved being out with the people and hanging out with people, if I saw something going on, I was never scared to just punch somebody in the mouth, which
Okay.
has happened on tour and had been an issue at times where something would pop off and there'd be a fight, or I ended up getting locked up with some friends from another band called SSCP from Ohio. Still one of my best friends to this day, Bomber. We were just going around doing stupid stuff and like opening car doors and just being, dumb kid, teenage stuff. And we ended
Yeah.
up getting the cops came because I think Bomber opened the door and took like a can of Altoids out of it or something. And this lady saw it from her window. This is like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm talking, we maybe walked a block from there and just get swarmed on. And
Oh man, for some Altoids.
for some Altoids, I know. So it's just just doing dumb kid stuff. But I remember on the before that happened when we were on tour with them, um, there was another band that we kind of had like a rivalry with, and they were like starting some stuff, and then it just was throwing hands at this venue in the middle of nowhere and
Right.
like Pennsylvania somewhere, so like Hanover or something. So it's like that. I don't think that's a good thing, especially now thinking about it. But I've just never really, I don't want to say like, I was never really scared of the consequences of any of that stuff, I guess. So it's again, that might be more of that villain arc, but it's,
Yeah.
it is, it's just that when you're an artist and you just I feel like your mind is just torn so many different ways and you want to explore so many different things, and
Yes.
if you don't put all of that into different music projects, which now I'm a little bit better at, I've been doing like a villain arc on some music. I joined a nerdcore rap group where it's very like nerdy stuff, and but I'm the bad guy of the group, and it's like okay, I could put that into this,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
don't have to go out and like fulfill some of my fantasies of being a goon, which
Sure.
there was time, like I said, there was times where like I had the opportunity a few times just through people I knew to go do like evictions where like somebody
Okay.
wouldn't get out of somebody's house, and
Yeah.
Pennsylvania is a place that renters never have to leave. They get like 6 months, so you just call them up and then we'd go show up and get the guy out of the house.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, But
Yeah.
they, it, it wasn't necessarily that I don't know. It didn't give me anything, but I liked it at the time, I guess. But I also at that same time was in the army and I liked doing that too. It's like it's weird. Now I did a few years later get diagnosed with a borderline personality disorder, which I think comes
Okay.
from all of the just being on all the time and having to like the drop of a dime. I'll walk around sometimes in places that I've never even been, and somebody will scream from their car, "Let's go, guy!" which is like my slogan from the Ciphers, and I gotta instantly kick into the mode because people
Ah,
expect a certain thing. If you've only ever met me on the internet and your impression of me is watching these Ciphers, which is where a lot of people know me from, I just got to be on. It's like, oh, yay, going into it. So it's like just and it is I don't think it's hard to switch on, but it can be taxing. So it's
yeah.
yeah. And if you're a creative person, you probably know what I'm talking about. I think you almost put yourself into a psychosis though doing it.
Yes, it can lead to that very easily, I think,
Right.
for many who have the inclination, whether it's genetic, whether it's just from being used to that environment of having to turn it on and leave it on.
Right.
It's it's just something that can happen to you, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And I don't see it as something that's bad. I just see it as something that you want to try and be conscious of it, try to pay attention to that, and have an element of understanding. If you go too far, some things are going to happen, just the way it is.
Might not come back.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. You may end up in jail. You may end up
Which has
with your
happened.
face busted up. However, um,
Both of those things have happened to me. I was working at a record store in this time, and I kept getting picked up for stupid stuff. Like I was in a group of like punk rock kids who we always used to fight like these more like I want to say like normal kids, like
mm,
societally normal. And that's
gotcha.
a big thing that my book is about. But we would get picked up by the cops all the time. And we're kids, so nothing really would happen, but
Right.
when I worked at this record store called Long in the Tooth, my nickname was Jailhouse because it was like every other weekend I was getting arrested for fighting or something stupid. And I still have they still have a picture of me on the wall. It said Jailhouse on it, and it says like to my loving fans at Long in the Tooth. It was just fun. It became like this big joke. But yeah,
Right.
so if it's again one of those things, I talk to my kids about this stuff, all my students. I call them my kids, but not my actual children, they're too young. But my students, I'm always talking to them about like I, when I worked at Workshop Houston, I was so fortunate to work with kids that were very similar to me
Hmm.
and just had a lot of, they're super talented and they had maybe some problems at home or whatever that had led them into similar situations that I was in. And I really made it my mission to make sure that these kids didn't go down some of the really dumb paths that I did. And again,
Yeah.
like I've said 3 or 4 times, like I'd be farther if I didn't, but I wouldn't take it away because I wouldn't be the same person.
Yeah.
Those experiences really led me to where I am now, and now it's like not even like I don't have that same just always ready to jump off and
Right.
swing on somebody like that. That
Yeah.
was kid stuff, but
Yeah.
and especially going through the army and going through all the different life changes and touring and being humbled very heavily. I never thought, and the studio was very successful for many years, and I still ended up being homeless. And I still ended up being homeless with kids on the way. And it was a very humbling situation. And, I went through getting medically discharged out of the army, and then I got a divorce. And then I went and started working in Houston and just like all these crazy life changes that happened at one time. And it was just like then my best friend, I call him one of my brothers, passed away, and
Okay.
that I left my job in Houston, moved back to Philly, didn't have a place to stay. That's where I was homeless because it was just like I felt like I had to do it. His name was Rich Quick. Everything had to be to like in his honor, and I had to just be like this kind of back to when I was a kid, when I was in 50 bands and touring all the time. I had to just go that hard, and I made some of the best music I ever made in that period, like trying to do it for him. But
Yeah.
every day I was at a show. I'm in the studio till 3 or 4 a.m. Then I'm going in to shows, shaking hand, just to shake hands with people or perform or showing love to other artists, and then sleep until 7 back in the studio all day doing, and it was just like not sustainable, and it turned me into a lunatic. I
Yeah.
actually had like a full mental just collapse at that point, but it was just, yeah, it was just, it was a lot. It was a lot to deal with. But again, I would even that, even the hardest points of this journey, I wouldn't change because I think it's made me just a way better person and more like just compassionate and yeah. So,
Better educator because of the experiences.
oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. I can totally see that. And I think, again, too, that's part of the beauty of going through the struggle.
Right,
And if you can see it from that perspective, then it makes it a little bit more palatable. A lot of people can't see it from that perspective. That even my own journey, I've had to come to the realization that all of the things that I've done and I've gone through and experienced has led me to this point of having this conversation with you and being able
exactly.
to relate to you on a level that's a little bit different than probably a lot of the podcasts or news shows that you've been on promoting the book or any of that stuff, just because I understand what the mindset of a creative is like, because I am one.
Right,
I understand what some of the music industry is like because I've been a part of it in a way. Understand what the fashion industry is like. I've been a part of it. Understand what the jewelry industry is like. I've been a part of it. Being an independent artist, I know what that's like. I know what the struggle is of trying to just get the next client, kind of a thing. I know what it's like to be locked up in a psych ward because just tried to commit suicide. Different things and different experiences of being able to now share with others and relate to them and show compassion and show understanding and be able to walk somebody through their life story from the viewer's point, but yet I'm able to highlight certain things and point those out that a lot of times the guest doesn't even comprehend or remember, or they haven't looked at it from that perspective.
right.
So again, it's just experiences that we've gone through that have got us to this place in time, and it helps us to be that better person for anybody else that we're working with because of those experiences. And it's just, it is what it is. And a lot of people may look at it and be like, no, that's horrible. You did all these things, but it is what it is. That's
No,
your
I
life.
agree.
It's your life, not theirs. They didn't experience it. You did. So you can say all of these things from a different point of view, but if you haven't lived it, then you don't know exactly what somebody goes through.
No, I agree 100%. And again, it's like for me, I don't really have any kind of shame in all this
Yeah.
stuff. And there's things that I didn't touch on that were, not great things, but I still just
Right.
I don't even have shame in those because not only did it lead me to, like you just said, I agree with everything you said, to this point, to us having this conversation, but it's like, it's such a, uh, it's character development.
Yeah.
It is truly character development where without it, I might never have, because like I said, life has humbled me in so many ways that the ego problem I used to deal with is not there. And anybody I've ever been with in a band with could tell you, I had to be the guy who wrote every song. I couldn't share that part. Like it was like I'm writing all the song and I'm probably writing all the song on your instrument too, and you're just gonna play it how I want you to play it. And I know that's not cool, you know. It's like a band should be a way more collaborative thing, and it's like that was a big problem that I had to get over. And even for years, once I really broke into like hip hop, doing like collaborative projects, it's like I want to make the music, you know, and if it's I'm making the music and there's a vocalist, it's like I'm making 100% of the music without the input, plus I'm inputting on your lyrics or how you're delivering. And while the product I always felt turned out great, and there has been a lot of success in a lot of that stuff, some, you know, Grammy looks and whatnot, it's like I don't think it's necessarily the best way to do it. I had to be humbled in life to really get to that point of being
Right.
able to even admit that, because it's like, well, I've had all this experience, so we should just do it this way. But it's, you know, you kind of cut yourself off from doing other things. But even again, I don't regret working how I worked, because if I always was humble, it wouldn't. I might it might have flipped later. You know, you can be humble all your life, and then you get to a point where you're like, I'm the greatest of all time. So
Right.
I'm glad I knocked out the ego early. And again, when I also thought, you know, when I'm a younger guy, I was just ripped. You know, if you look at old pictures, I mean, I'm in great shape. I was in army shape. I thought I was just God's gift. So it's just like I had to get over all that stuff. And
Yeah.
it was like I had to get over that stuff. I had to get over like drugs and alcohol and everything. I had to get over selling and
Yeah.
doing and fighting and all that stuff. And or it's kind of like a kid when you have a kid and you just put so much strict rule on them that they don't
Yeah.
get to fail on their own. When they become adults is when they fail. And I think that that's where it becomes a problem.
For sure. For sure. So you're out on tour. You're doing all these things. Come off the label. You're still touring, doing multiple bands. Talk to me about the mindset of where does the military come into play? Because as you said, it was a shocking thing. And
It
when I
was.
read that in some of your bio information, I was like, wait a second. This
Yeah.
makes no sense at all to me.
It didn't. And after Fruit Punch was, we broke up in 2009, and I had been in, we started another band called Extra Tongue, immediately picked right up. You know, we're on the cover of Maximum Rock and Roll. I
Oh,
had that
wow.
hanging up in the studio still. We were like, then, and Fruit Punch had just been on Maximum Rock. We weren't a cover band, but we were just in one. That's hanging up at the studio still too. But it's like, then Extra Tongue, our guitarist moved away. So from one of the me and Pork started another band called Build Us, Rebuild Us. And we were just super heavy, wall of cabs. Every time we performed, we had a van that was just full of cabs. And we were just like, it was a three piece, me on drums, him on guitar, and his girlfriend Mary on bass. And it was just no, it was really good. Like it was one of my favorite bands I've ever been in. And then we were going on tour with Weed Eater, and then this is like 2008 or 9, and then I come to find out this girl calls me, who was a girl that used to book us for shows and stuff. She's like, "Are you dead?" And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Are you dead?" I'm like, "Candace, I'm talking to you right now. What are you talking
Right.
about?" He's like, "Michael told me you died." And I'm like, "What?" So like he never had picked me up for a tour. Like he had the van and stuff. So it was just like he told everybody I died so he could get out of the tour.
Oh,
And
my
then
God.
we never played again after that. It was just such a wild thing. So I didn't have a band going on at the
Okay.
time. And then the studio just was about to open. We opened up, and we couple months in, my best like my childhood best friend Chad, he came. He was always super supportive of all my music stuff, and he was just like kind of lost. He came in, he goes, I'm gonna join the Marines. And I was like, me too. That was that. This is there was no thought to it. It was just like, me too. Let's go. So we literally got up and went to the like recruiter's office. And at the Marine office, he was just like, well, you can get in, but you're not getting in. I was like, why? And he's like, all this, like, I'm
Yeah.
covered in tattoos. And he's like, yeah, you can't get in. So we were like, oh. And then Chad was like, well, I'm not gonna do it without you. So we went to the Air Force, and they were like, no tattoos. So we went to the Coast Guard. There was a Coast Guard recruiting office at Franklin Mills Mall in the Northeast. And we went up there and they were just never open. We went there every day for a week, never open. So I have no clue. And then we went to the army and they're like, come in, we can waiver all that. So I ended up doing that. There was, like I said, no like thought to it. I was not like this super patriotic, like gotta be in the army kind of guy. I was very, like I said, political. Like if you went into my bedroom as like a at 12 to whatever, 18, pardon my language, I am gonna say a bad word here, but it was a picture of Josh Shapiro fucking Pennsylvania State. It was like that's the kind of stuff I have on my wall. You know what I
Got
mean? And
okay, yeah,
this when he was a state representative,
yeah,
and just like all this kind of stuff, like super all those punk rock shows, you'd get all this propaganda and like whatnot.
right,
And there was a period where I thought I was going to join the ALF, the Animal Liberation Front. Like I would get like zines at these shows from these guys, and they'd have like how to make a bomb in them and stuff, and
yeah, yeah,
who you should blow up. And I was like really like on that wave, and then I joined the army. But I had this like such a I'm doing it, and I've talked about the army so much in my songs
hmm,
and just the military and the government and everything. And I had just like a really different view of what it was. And I really thought everybody I was about to meet was going to be some kind of just like, I want to go over there and kill people and all this kind. I met, and between the army and the guard, I did 12 years, and I met one guy like that the whole time.
wow,
It was so different. Like, and while I still don't like agree with everything,
sure,
I'm still idealistically like the same 15-year-old kid. But
okay,
99% of the people I've ever encountered over there are like either trying to get their citizenship, they're trying to get health insurance, they need to provide for their kids, they
yeah,
want school. None
yeah,
of these people want to like go and like murder people. It's
go to
just not,
war, right,
honestly, the
exactly,
people who say shit like that, like they're not even qualified for service. It's like it's 1% of the population's actually qualified to do it. You know,
mm,
it's like such a low percent of the population actually signs up and is qualified to do it without pre-existing health problems, in the shape to do it. Even the tattoo thing eliminates a lot of people from most branches. And it's
yeah,
like, so going and just seeing the quality of people that are actually in, it was like some of these people are my brothers for life,
yeah,
and being in situations with some of these guys is very similar to being in situation with your bandmates on tour. Um,
exactly,
so it was a great experience. I loved basic training. Again, I was super fit, so like I loved running. I loved doing all that stuff. I loved and I had been around like weapons my whole life too, so it's like I had no problem. I know people were like freaked out, like shooting M4s and whatnot, and it's like this is cool. Let's go for it. And again, kind of going in that like growing up, I loved comic books. I was huge. I especially like Frank Castle was big for me. I have a huge
all right,
Punisher
nice,
tattoo, and I love Frank Castle. I love Spider-Man, Iron Man. I was big Marvel. I love Batman. I got Batman tattoos. I was big into anime. I was big into like all this stuff. So it was like part of that was like fulfilling that like just fulfilling that like want to have some of that for me, I guess. And again, like I said, it was really no like thought to it. I didn't know what I was getting. My dad was pissed at me. He was just like, "Don't do that. Like you got your music career, the studio. Like you're gonna ruin it. You're gonna, all this. You're gonna derail it." And it was like, and maybe in some ways it might have, because at that time too, I was doing. I After all my bands broke up, I started really taking rapping serious. I was like, well,
okay,
this is something I could do by myself. I don't need to rely on anybody. I can make
yeah,
all the music myself. I could do all this. And so I started really taking that very serious, and that was starting to take off. At that time too, it was like mid 2000 time where it's like it wasn't as common to see like a white dude at a rap show like
for sure,
as the rapper in the
yeah,
audience, sure, but like so I took advantage of that. It was like an impressive thing to do, and I brought a lot of like the punk rock essence with it. Like it
yeah, yeah,
wasn't typical. It kind of was like more sad songs. It was, it was a lot different than a lot of the other people that were performing, but it started getting a little buzz, and I was doing a ton of shows. So maybe it did kind of, because basic training in AIT took up a little bit of that time before I was able to come home and get back to it. So
Hmm.
I might have killed a little momentum, but I wouldn't change that either. It was such a great experience. Just, I just feel like you can't really talk about something, and you kind of touched on this earlier, if you've never like lived the experience.
Yeah.
So now even all my criticisms, I feel more validated in having, because it's like, no, I know. Like I know that like there'd be times where we'd need a hammer, and I was like, I'll go buy a hammer right now. It's like, no, you can't do that. You got to order it through this system, and a hammer costs
Right.
$99 for a shitty hammer.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like a loaf of bread is $20 where it's $1. So it's
Right.
like, and you can't go do it. You have to do it because that's how they're lacing whoever got that government contract's pockets. So
Yep.
I have a lot of those criticisms still, but I feel validated because I did it and I lived it, and I feel like I'm allowed to have those criticisms, and anybody
Yeah.
can have them. Everybody's allowed to have whatever opinion they want, but I just feel like mine are more rooted in the experience than anything else now.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Did you have to do any combat missions at all in the war?
Uh, no, most of the stuff that I've done, when I first came in, I went in as 92 golf. So I asked them, what's the shortest training I could do? And
Okay.
it was either infantry or cook, which is 11 Bravo or 92 Golf. And I liked cooking, and I actually had a cooking show on like around this time. So I was like, okay. It was like we worked for this magazine called Oogie Woogie. It was it's kind of like a BuzzFeed, like Philly's version of
Okay.
BuzzFeed.
Yeah.
And I did like a cooking show for that, and it's still on YouTube if anybody's interested in that stuff.
All right.
But so I was like, okay, let me do that. And then I ended up getting put into an infantry unit and ended up doing that anyway. But that was how I started, just so I could get back as quick as possible and go right into music. And then as I was going with my military career, I got into counter drug. And counter drug was really cool. It was like a joint force or a joint task force that was like military and federal, local, state, like law enforcement stuff. And
Mhm.
we did like Middle Eastern intelligence, domestic terrorism. So like anytime I go anywhere like that has to do with military stuff, and I show my certificates and stuff, they're like, I've never seen anybody with this much like certificates, because I'm just stacked to the gills. I took any training I could get. I love doing training and stuff. So yeah, that was it was
Yeah. That's very
much.
interesting that you are decorated like you are because of the fact of if I'm looking back at early childhood, right? You did not want to conform to what the standard process was, right? At school. And then fast forward, now you're like, I want to learn this. I want to do this. I want to figure this out.
I did not conform to the standard process in there either, and I used to get in trouble from my training officers all the time because I got myself into the counter drug school.
Okay.
That I found a loophole that you could register yourself for it, and
Really?
I got chewed. I'm talking like, and I got chewed out like super hard. But when I went to my first one, I got chewed out after it happened because they didn't even know I was going to go. I just left. Then I hit it off with the training NCO at Counter Drug so hard that I went to every training and just started being a part of that. But my training officer at my unit was, I'm talking really,
Pissed.
yeah, yeah, really pissed because he's like, "How are you?" And I kept doing it. I'd come in there, and because after you do a training, you got to bring your certificate to them, and they're like, "How? Like, what do you need advanced interrogation for?"
Right.
It's like, what is this about? It's like, how did you even sign up for this? And it's like, I don't, and just getting screamed at. But it's like I didn't stop. And then eventually it just was the thing. That's what I started doing. The only thing about my military career that I didn't get to do, there was the Army has something called MWR, and they do the USO tours, and they were looking for an audio engineer, and I hit them up, and they were like, "You are overqualified for this. We would love to have you." And they like got in with my first sergeant, and my first sergeant just wouldn't sign off on me going, because I that was one thing I needed his signature on, because it was like a whole transfer to another state. That was in Fort Sam Houston, and that was where the MWR like base, like the head is, the HHC. So he wouldn't sign off on that, but when I found that loophole to do counter drug stuff, I was in there. There was, I mean, literally, like I said, basic tactics for wars, domestic terrorism, Middle Eastern intelligence, terror threat finance. That was through the DIA, and I really was into it too. It was like there was a point the DIA director who was teaching that terror threat finance, he was like recruiting me, and he took me to see the Senators game, the baseball game. We went out to dinner and all this. Like I was like, I really thought I was going to go that route
Okay.
in life. I was like, oh, maybe music's not for me. Maybe I'll do. And I do have a talent for that intelligence work,
Yeah.
but again, music just wins. There's just no feeling that like equates to being on stage and performing in front of people, and then after everybody coming up to you and being like, your music changed my life, or any of that
Right.
kind of stuff. It just doesn't. I'd probably be wealthy right now if I would have went the DIA route. But it's just like the music thing is just such a better feeling. While I love that, I mean, I did, even after the military, I did the veteran fire corps. I did a season as a wildland firefighter. And again,
Okay.
not like that was like something I had to, I like experiences. And like
Yes.
it drives like my wife's like, why do you want to do that? Like what does this have to do with anything in life? And it's like, I just want to do it. I just want to do it. If there's something I feel like my whole thought is like, if I'm sitting on my deathbed, am I going to regret not doing that one thing? Whether I
Mm,
liked it or not. Like I have not done another season as a firefighter. I actually got hurt on that. I tore my MCL and had to get rushed to we were in Yellowstone doing like prescribed burns, and I
right.
got rushed to a hospital that was 4 hours away, and it was a whole crazy situation. But the people I met on that were amazing. Just getting to connect with other veterans, and again, like so many people in the military do music too. I've recorded my first sergeant before. I've recorded my supply sergeant's band. I used to go film his. He was in an Irish like rock band. I used to go film his band, do shows, and so
Cool.
many different people I was in with rapped or played guitar or whatever. Like I've done so much music with military people, and I said this on another podcast recently, but so many people from the military, almost everybody in the military knows me as like a musician, but most people from music don't know that I was in the military because it just never comes up. No
Right.
one ever asks, you could be doing a session or doing some music. People are like, hey, were you ever in the army? Like that's never, I don't think it's ever
Right.
come up once, but otherwise, military people be like, yeah, what are you into? You do music, you do what? There's always, because most people in the military, that's not their entire like existence. There's
Yes.
always another hobby. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing.
And you mentioned too that you were in the Guard as well, National Guard. Was that after coming out of the Army that
Yeah,
you?
I did that for in Pennsylvania, and then I did in Tennessee. I did the State Guard as well.
Okay.
Um, and I mean, it's all ideally the same thing. I'm still got to do the all the Army standards. It's all the
Right.
same basic training and everything. But yeah, it was after.
Okay. Okay. And I thought you mentioned you had a medical discharge out of
I
one of
did, yeah. So I had a RE3 code, which is I had Crohn's disease. So
Okay.
my unit was gearing up to deploy. It was after we went to there was a period where half of us went to Iraq and half of us went to Hurricane Katrina. And then we were gearing up to deploy again in I think we started gearing for it in like 2014, I want to say. And I got I had been in basic training is when it started. I went into the army at 180 pounds. I'm 6'3", and then I dropped like 30 pounds really quickly in training. And they're
Mm,
like, and I looked rough, had very like skin
yeah. Yeah.
just tight to the bone. And they said I had like IBS, and they wanted me to drink like 4 Ensures a day and all this stuff. So for years after that, we're trying to figure out what's going on between army doctors and civilian doctors. And finally, in 2013, I got diagnosed with Crohn's. And by 2014, they wanted me to do Humira. and that was considered a non-deployable. And it was basically like my medical NCO was kind of like, look, your options are don't take it, or you take it and we just push you out. And I was very sick. It was bad. I mean, every time I'm going to the bathroom, it's just like tons of blood. I would get like blockages where I'm throwing up. I'd be in the hospital 2, 3 weeks at a time at times. So I opted to try the Humira, and then 6 months on Humira, I gained 100 pounds, and it did like put me into like I'd say a remission, at least better than it was, but it also did a lot of other stuff
Damage.
that
Yeah.
made me not necessarily like qualified to do everything.
Gotcha.
But so yeah, I mean, if I knew everything I knew, I wouldn't have like they pushed me out and I got out 2 months before my contract was up. And if
Ah,
I knew everything I knew, I wouldn't have signed everything. I would just let my contract end because it would have made like everything with the VA later in life a lot easier, but they don't tell you this stuff. They're
no.
not your if you're in the military, like just know that the people in charge are not your friends. So
Exactly.
yeah, they are not your friends. They don't want you getting paid. And again, I got diagnosed. Now I'm fighting with the VA because they said IBS while I was in training, and then they're saying, yeah, well, you were off of active duty because by the time I was in the guard is when I got diagnosed. And they're saying that I was off of active duty. So because I was off active duty, the getting diagnosed in the guard didn't count towards. It's just this whole thing. I'm like, yeah, well, you diagnosed me while on active duty for IBS, and IBS is consistently misdiagnosed as Crohn's. So
Phones.
it's been this whole thing. But even after that, like when my code was an RE3 code, so I was able to join the Tennessee State Guard and do that
Okay.
too, which was a lot of fun also. My whole thing with that was while I went into Tennessee State Guard as a 11 Bravo, it was at the 4th Infantry Regiment, which 11 Bravo is infantry. They switched me to a 25 Charlie, and that's radio. So it was cool getting to do something new. Yeah, so it's just like again, it's experiences. I like the experiences. I like getting to do different things. And there's always now that I've done it that element that just like when I'm not in doing any kind of military stuff, I do kind of miss like throwing the uniform on at 5
Right.
a.m. and the zipping the boots up half asleep and all that stuff. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's that dual personality thing I got going on.
For sure. I get it. I get it. And also too, it's kind of that trajectory of, the villain versus the hero scenario, right? Military scenario kind of pulls you over into that hero-esque mindset and role, so to speak. Um, Maybe doesn't play into it all the way, but from a psychological standpoint, it can put you in the mindset of mission and purpose. So with that comes along a little bit of that hero component, as I see it.
No,
Maybe,
no, for sure. That's it. You're,
maybe
you're
not.
hitting the nail on the head.
Are you currently still in
I
Tennessee Guard?
I own the Tennessee Guard now. And my wife was like, "Why are you doing this?" But mainly because I want to go to officer school. It's something because
Okay.
post military, I got my bachelor's and master's degree and was starting my doctorate. And it was, I did all this schooling now, which again is hilarious
Right.
compared to like early school. I did
Exactly.
all this schooling. It's like, why not go to officer school and get to like help propel this thing from like a leadership standpoint? And
Right.
I'm an NCO, which is a non-commissioned officer, which is
Okay.
different from a commissioned officer. The NCO leads the troops. Like we're out there with them, getting them squared away. And then a commissioned officer, they lead they lead the thing. They come up with the game plan, they're battle planning, all that stuff. If there's, we do it mostly like that disaster response. The Tennessee State Guard's main mission is disaster response. So it's
Okay.
if there's a flood, a tornado or something, we try to get the communications up, and we'll work with FEMA or TEMA, which is basically just Tennessee's FEMA. Every state has one. So we'll work with them, and just like the whole Tennessee Department of Military kind of works together to like get those disasters like squared away. But
Yeah.
yeah, like that, like I said, I felt like there was still more I could do in that world, and it's such a small commitment. It's 1 week in a month. It's not like I got to go every day and do anything.
Right.
And I'm
Yeah.
beyond. being able to do that. You know, I got two kids. I'm way out of shape. Which they told me recently. We had PHAs, and they're like, "Yeah, you know, come on, buddy." I'm like, "I know." They're like, "We had to get weighed," and they're like, "You gotta lose 40 pounds here." And I'm like, I know, I gotta do. I'll do it." So
Right.
I'm starting to like get into that now. All right, I once I gained that weight from Humira in 2015, I just have never been able to get it off. It has
Sure.
been it has been a fight, and I've always been active, especially even with two kids. You know, I'm running around with them all the time. I've
Yeah.
gone through plenty of very active periods, still touring, still on the road, still doing all this stuff, and it just doesn't want to. It's stubborn, but
Right.
if I want to do the officer school thing, I do need to drop that 40. So I'm gonna do it.
I get it. I get it. Does the I'm assuming because I also take medication. Medication I take is for my mental health stuff.
Right. I've been
But
there too.
I know the side effects are there and what those are. Is are you gonna potentially need to switch medication in
I
order?
got off of Humira like once I
Oh,
gained that
did
weight,
you?
I
Okay.
said I'm not doing this anymore.
Okay.
I
Got
haven't taken really any medicine other than like weed for
you. Okay.
Crohn's in years.
Nice. Okay.
Just it's honestly, it's like I, if you read the side effects of these biologics, they're insane. I don't have any trust for like the pharmaceutical industry. So it's
Yeah.
like already like makes me, and I also had to take, when Rich died, I had full mental collapse. I remember I was going to a studio session, and it was this guy, Nico the Beast, and he was waiting for me at the studio. I call him, I'm under a bridge, like sobbing, like just the night before I couldn't sleep. I was just like losing my mind. So, and then I call my mom. She's in Texas, and she calls a crisis center, and I go there. That's where I get diagnosed with all this stuff, and they put me on, you know, Ariprazole and Paxil and
Oh,
Trazodone and all this stuff. And it just like while I was on that stuff, it made me not feel like I could even do it. I just felt
yeah.
so unmotivated, and I still to this day, I haven't been on it in years. I
Okay.
still to this day don't feel like I ever fully got back to where I was prior. Like
Yeah.
I do still feel like I'm able to create, but it's so much harder for me to dig unless it's perfect environment. If I'm
Yeah.
sitting there with my friends and we're all writing together, that's perfect environment. But if I'm by myself and I have a deadline on something, I'm just like, I'm racking my brain just trying to get the motivation to finish things. And especially like the trazodone and all that. Oh man, I just felt like a zombie. So it was like for me, and honestly, my wife really helped me get off of that. So I was still like nutty at the time. I didn't like really like pull it all together, and I'm still not. I'm never gonna pull it all together. I still have my very like I have like crazy suicidal ideations all the time.
Okay.
But the day my daughter was born was like, okay. Yeah, and the night before, if you ask her, the night before, you know, like I said, we were down there dealing with my grandpa, and he got in his truck and disappeared. So my wife is scheduled for a C-section at 8 in the morning. We're
Oh,
driving around Houston, Texas, looking for this guy. We got my mom who's in Honduras calling all over trying to find him, calling gas stations. My uncles are calling gas stations. Everybody's out looking for him. We finally find him and get him back home, and he's just like in like a manic kind of state, and I'm sitting with him, and it messed me up. Like I'm watching him just like not even like really be there. You know, it's just
yeah.
like very. And then we go. I didn't get any sleep, and then we drive to the hospital to have a baby. And I'm just like I'm losing it up until that point, until she's like there. And it's like okay, I got to get my stuff together here, and then I'd have I so my biggest thing would be I would feel like nothing is real. That was what would happen. I mean, I was like I would feel like this is all like a simulation, or it's like I would tell people it was like the Truman Show or something. Like
Right.
it's
Yeah.
just nothing is real, nothing like I got to this one at the height of it, I got to this point where it felt like I am like 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 sleep somewhere, and I'm creating all of this reality like where everybody I know is like just being made up by me, and it's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, it's just like all this like fake artificial stuff, and nothing's actually happening, or every single person is like sending a message from my subconscious. It sounds crazy, but this is where
No,
I was.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, so that's where I was at with it, and it was just like when she was born, I got to the point where like if nothing is real, I'd rather enjoy this not real artificial thing than
Yeah.
just be going nuts. So
Right.
even now, if I start having that feeling coming on, I'm like, I don't even care. It's fine. And that actually really, I know it sounds crazy, but that helped me so much more than the medicine,
Yeah.
anything ever did. It was like, I don't care. It's like, if it's not real, I don't care. It's like, whatever.
That's the power of the mind
Right.
that a lot of people don't comprehend or cannot comprehend. But there's plenty of studies that have gone on throughout the mental health industry in terms of placebo versus real medications or whatever
Right.
to help work with something. And even from the placebo side of it, they're looking at it and they're like, okay, the mind is shifting and changing because it thinks that this is going on. So even with you making that conscious decision of, I don't even care, I'm just going to keep going, I'm going to keep doing, that's changing the brain chemistry in and of itself. And it's also changing the ways that the neurons and neurotransmitters are communicating to the point where it's almost like you're tricking it into doing what you want it to do anyways. So it's not unheard of. It's not far fetched. It's
Right.
not crazy or any of that stuff. Like you telling me that for me, it's just like, oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
It makes absolute sense. Totally understand what you're saying. The audience may not, and that's okay. But there also is a lot of people out there that do understand it from that perspective.
I think a lot of people like when you have those kind of issues, which I don't even like claim them anymore, but it's like when you have them, they're like if you're not on your medicine, people like start getting like weird or panicky. But it's like
Right.
again, going back to what we were just talking about, I just don't seeing everything and again being so political, like I know where the industry of like the pharmaceutical industry came from, and they have
Right.
not always had people's
No.
best intentions at heart. And even to this day, it's like everything down to the opiates are synthetic. It's like
Yeah.
all this stuff is synthesized versions of real things. So it's like for me now, I'm really big on supplements, which I think I when all that was going on, I also like skyrocketed my blood pressure because
Okay.
I'm always in a panic. It was like always just something was going on, and I was on like amlodipine for years with all that stuff, and it was like okay, I got to this point like really doing the research, like this stuff is like synthesized crap. It's like not good for you. And I start looking up like what actually is from the earth that they base all these drugs on. And I just started taking all these supplements. My blood pressure has been better for the last few years on that stuff than it
Right.
ever was. And
Yeah.
same with like mental stuff. It's like ashwagandha or, all just different herbs and dandelion root and all this other stuff is like
Yeah.
so much better for you. And they literally, even like with all this new like weight loss stuff, they base all that stuff off of like venom from different animals that like necrosizes the fat or whatever. And it's like, it's all just they get these ideas. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. It's cool. Like it's medical science is cool. The stuff still does exist in its form in Earth. And I don't judge anybody. Like when all this stuff was going on with COVID, I remember people like freaking out on vaccines versus. I didn't care what anybody did. Like I'm
Yeah.
very big on like your freedom of choice. If you feel like you need a medicine, take the medicine, but don't force somebody else to take it.
Right.
That's how I feel about so many things. Like I don't really care what anybody does. It's not my business what you do with your body, and it shouldn't be anybody's business but it's your choice. So I don't know. The medicine people just feel very I think people feel very entitled. I don't know how I got here, but I think people feel entitled to other people's bodies, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's not me. While like I said, while I decided I wasn't doing Humira, I'm gonna try like I really limited like I don't eat bread anymore, and
Okay.
that's helped my Crohn's immensely. I try not to eat fried foods.
Okay.
I know if I eat fried foods, it's gonna be a problem. So
Yeah.
it's like I've tried to do more of the diet thing. If I'm having a
Yeah.
bad flare up, I'll go to a state that has recreational weed and do some RSO, and then
Yeah.
that'll keep me all right for a while.
Hmm.
And then again, that comes from the earth, man. I'm not like a hippie, but it's like, come on, man, it's from the earth.
Yeah.
But if you feel like Humira or Remicade or Semzia or any of this other stuff is good for you, then you take it. If you
Yeah.
feel like these things are good for you, then you do that. And I'm happy for you. I just don't like hold me down and put it put it in my veins. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Exactly. And that's the thing too, that a lot of times the diet and intake, because again, and I've said this on previous episodes, that everybody is an individual.
Right.
Nobody is the exact same. So one thing that works for one person may not work for the next person. And you have to be able to have that understanding and be your own advocate
Right.
through mental health journey, through whatever struggles you're dealing with. You have to be your own advocate, because if you don't, then you're going to end up in a scenario where you were talking about your one of your officers that was like, yeah, we're just going to let you go now, where if you waited another 2 months and just went out and let your contract end, you would have had some better benefits,
Oh yeah.
essentially, right? But you didn't know that at the time, so it just is what it is. But for people that are out there that are hearing this conversation, you have to be your own advocate. And what works for one person doesn't always work for the next. And if you think it does, and you think that is the only way it can be, then you're already off into the weeds to begin with.
I agree with you, and I think as I've worked with so many different types of people and different personality types, I have noticed more now, and I'm more accepting of it. Because before, especially punk rocker, it's like, why can't you see that this is like, like why can't you like open your eyes to this? And it's like some people that's just not them. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
yeah,
even my business partner, Ethan, who I love, Ethan, that's one of my best friends. We own this studio together. He was a punk rocker too, but he like used to joke. We'd have people at the studio all the time, and we used to watch those FEMA camp videos and talk about the apocalypse all the time. And he used to always joke that he'd like sell us out to Satan and in the end times and all this stuff. And it's like I used to get mad at his jokes about that. It's like, well, how can I trust you if you do, you know what I mean? And now
right.
it's like I get it now. Like Ethan is very much a systems guy, and he's cool with the system. His
Yeah.
wife's a pharmacist, so
Okay.
he believes in the system, and that's
Right.
fine. Like it took me years. It's like it took me years to understand that some people just are system people, and there's other people that are against the system, and then there's other people that are neither for or against. They are just the worker bee, and they're just
Yeah.
gonna get by, and all of that holds a place in society, and everybody's free to be there to hold their place. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
before, I mean, being a kid, it's like, why can't you see these people are evil? Like they're bad people. Like they're doing. And it's like, what are you talking about, kid? Like, what do you know about
Right.
evil? But so, that's just life experience that'll like get you to that point, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So with transitioning from punk into rap into having the studio, and you've got all of these creative things flowing, where did you come up with the idea of I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write a book?
Well, the book thing is, I tell everybody it took me 20 years to write this book.
Okay.
Um, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Trauma. They did like the Toxic Avenger and
No.
It was a B horror movie company from Jersey.
Okay.
And I was a huge, I don't know why, if you're into punk, you like that crap too. But
Gotcha.
it's like I was a huge fan of that because they were very much a counterculture movie company.
Got
Like
it.
if you've ever seen the Toxic Avenger, he's a superhero, but it's like that could never be a mainstream superhero, They
Yeah.
actually just remade it with like Peter Dinklage, and it did pretty well. So maybe it will be mainstream now,
Okay.
but at the
He's a
time,
fantastic actor.
oh, incredible. I actually haven't gotten to see the new one yet. It might still be in theaters. I do want to see it, but I've just been doing the book tour. But
Gotcha.
he so they did a bunch of bad movies that I love. Sergeant Kabuki Man. They had a movie called Surf Nazis Must Die. And just like really just cheesy stuff. And one
Yeah.
called Poultrygeist, Night
Okay.
of the Chicken Dead, and it was like basically like in a KFC type situation. It's all bad, but it's so good. And
Yeah.
I was a huge fan of this stuff, and I got to meet Lloyd Kaufman. He's like the owner of it when I was like 15 at like a kind of like a Comic-Con type situation, like a conference thing. And
Yeah.
I was like, what would it take to get my script to be a movie? And he's just like, what's your script called? And I had no script. It was like, I'm very much making this up. And I'm like, Invasion of the Punk Rockers. Who Drank Blood? The musical, because they just did a movie called Cannibal the Musical. And I was and obviously just full of crap. He's just like, okay, okay, well, if you really have a script, get in touch with me and we'll see what we can do. So I'm back at home like furiously typing away this horrible script for Invasion of the Punk Rockers Who Drink Blood the musical. And the original plot of it was like, there's punk rockers, and if you get bit by like by a vampire or something, you turn to a corporate zombie. It was horrible. It was very cliche, very just, but it was on brand with what they were doing and on brand with
Okay.
what I was doing too. So
Yeah.
it's just like just bad. But I gave up on it. And throughout the years, the title always stuck with me. It was just such a cool title, so I dropped the musical, obviously, and then I would come back to it, and then eventually, a couple years ago, I really got into doing it, and I just retooled the whole thing. I kept like the character names and the title. That was it. Completely different plot. It's like actually a real like story. I and
Yeah.
and not to toot my own horn, but I think it's like one of the more original like vampire stories in a while
Okay.
because it's not that's not the only thing it's about. You know what I mean? It's very
Sure.
much a group of kids. They didn't fit in. They all found punk rock together. They created their own family. So it's a lot of my lived experience. And
Yeah.
then they're dealing with the real world monsters. Like they're dealing with racism and sexism and homophobia and just being a kid. Stuff that
Yeah.
no matter what side of that you're on, you've dealt with or seen it in school. And they're dealing with and seeing this stuff happening in school. And they're just like, okay, so this is how we're doing it through punk rock. And because of that, society is all around them in this small town, like coming down on them pretty hard. And I went through that with the cops always getting us when we were like
Yeah.
fighting these kids and stuff. So that is a big part of this story before the monsters even really like are a part of it. It's established that these kids are like they're not they are not the society's gold standard of what a
Yeah. Yeah.
kid should be. So yeah, that's what I think made it so unique and so fun. Like I'm telling you, when I'm writing this thing, there's times where I just ear to ear smile just because it was so like it's coming out of me. I'm just like, oh man, like this is so exciting. And then it's like that, and then I sent it to the developmental editor, and it was like, then he's sending it back to me, and I'm rereading it, and then I sent it to the copy editor, and then rereading, and then an advanced reader, and then rereading it with notes, and then formatter, and then reread. So I've read this thing so many times at this point, but the first as I was writing it was so exciting and just so cool, and yeah, I mean, the way that I have to work now with the kids is when they go to bed, I'm like it's like midnight till like 4 a.m. I'm just working on stuff. So I'd just
Oh,
be in
wow.
my office, just like which is where I'm at now, just sitting here just typing all night. And that
Okay.
until I got the thing done. So yeah, that my joke is it took 20 years. And I think that that like element of just still being able to be creative, while it is different from music,
Yeah. Yeah.
it still was very fulfilling. And now I have like outlined the sequel. I actually have like 12 parts of this in my
Nice.
head. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna do them all. Is where
Yeah.
I got like six direct sequels plus spin-offs and prequels. I'm
Nice.
gonna do them all, and they won't take. I have my publicist is like I have till next November to get the sequel out. So it's like I have a hard deadline, so I'm doing it. But
Okay.
yeah, so it is very fulfilling. It's a similar feeling to the music, like getting to have people like read this story and just be like, I love like this is incredible, or like hit me up just like I can't even, but like I've never seen anything like this or whatever. Like it's just as good of a feeling as somebody being like, your music saved my life or something. It's very similar. And when we dropped it, I mean, it hit like so many Amazon top 10 lists. It was like
Cool.
top 10 in young adult monster fiction, top 10 in teen zombie. There's not even zombies in the book, but it was top 10 in teen zombie fiction too for some
Right.
reason. And we hit like some of the bigger lists. We were top 100 in like just young adult fiction, top 100 in young adult thriller. So like we hit some of the really big lists and some of the more niche ones. So that was an
Nice.
awesome feeling. Yeah, I mean like I think the last time I had something as like fulfilling as this is when I got into the Grammy Society. It was like that was like, very similar. It's just like exciting, like this is a thing. So yeah, it's different from music, but it's very similar.
Got you. Now, you just said something, and I can't for the life of me figure out how we missed even bringing this up. But you just said you got into the Grammy Society.
Yeah, yeah. Got in
How did that come about?
so shout out to my guy Rob Schwartz. He's from Who Mag. He's our Sony rep, and
Okay.
I've known him forever. He's been putting out my music for years. And Who Mag, super, super cool. If you ever get a chance to link up with him, have him on because he'll have lots of stories. But he's been putting out music with Sony and as an independent for a long time, but he was the first hip hop DVD to get put in Walmart. Like, he's been
Really?
around for a while. Yeah, yeah. But he was the guy like my sponsor. So the Grammy Society is also the Recording Academy, they call it. So I'm in the Philly chapter of it, and Rob was like my guy. He was like he vouched for me hard to get in, and I had to
Got
go through the whole vetting. Anybody who's done it knows the application's so long. You're just like putting in all these things, and they use like Vamper to verify some of your music credits. I'm like, I don't even know what Vamper is, so I'm on Vamper signing up for that, and like having to do all that, and I of course me, I can be a procrastinator because I kind of like working under pressure for some reason. So it's
Gotcha.
like the day before it's due, I'm like, oh shit, I gotta like sign up for Vamper. What is this thing? So it's like I'm doing that and verifying all my credits, and then
Right.
it was like a 6 months wait to see if I got in or not. And then me and Ethan both got in, and it was just super exciting.
Right.
And then since then, I've gotten to do like I've gotten to mentor. So there's three different parts of the Grammy Society. There's a voting member, which is what I am. That's for artists and yeah, anybody who's like creating the music. And then there's
Gotcha.
the professional member, which is for engineers, which I could have done either or. They kind of were like, which one you want to do? Engineers, entertainment lawyers,
Yeah.
professional music industry people who might not be musicians, or there's Grammy U, and that's for students. So anybody who's in music school is eligible to do Grammy U. And it's yearly dues. I don't even remember how much it's 250, I think. You got to pay every year to stay in, but getting to mentor some of the Grammy U guys is cool, and it does a lot for like musicians' rights. So they're
Nice.
always doing like different campaigns for rights. They do a ton of networking events, which are really cool. It's a great thing. A lot of people don't even understand what it is, so or how like the Grammys work, which basically at a local level, everybody in your local chapter, they bring forth all the projects that are eventually going to be nominated for a Grammy. It's called being
Yeah.
considered for a Grammy. So
Right.
everybody has a list as a voting member where you put down what you want to bring forth, and that's once you do that, that project has been considered for a Grammy, which I've been probably like 100 times considered. But it's now from that stage, once everybody has considered things, everybody votes on what's being considered from your local chapter, and a certain amount of numbers move forth to go to be nominated.
Yeah.
And with the stuff that's nominated, they only read you the ones that have a chance of winning, but there's a whole ton of them.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's really cool to be a part of. I think you get to be a part of a little bit of history, and
Yeah.
again, like I think if you're a student or something, if your professors aren't telling you to go be part of Grammy U, they're not doing you right.
Mm.
It's I think the Grammy U dues are like $50 a year. And then after you graduate, I think you automatically can go into being a professional member. So
Okay.
I don't want to be saying the wrong information there. That's what I think it can be, but it's like, it's something that for the networking, especially if you're going for being an engineer or some kind of production person, the networking alone, it's like the $50, like you'll make that
Yeah.
back so quick.
Yeah,
It's,
for sure.
it's very important.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm glad we didn't skip over that because you said it real fast, and I was like, "Whoa, hold up." Um,
Yeah, I guess I don't put that in any. I should probably put that in more like bios or something that I'm a voting
absolutely,
member.
absolutely. The fascinating thing for me is from your story, Steve, is just watching you go through life, struggle, want to do your own thing, always looking to do your own thing, always looking to do figure it out your own way, and see that you've come up with this book now that's 20 years in the making, and it's literally the landscape of your storyline, basically. Uh,
It is.
Rooted in your love for punk and that culture, that society, that community, the connectedness that it can bring. And I just see the potential of you being able to do so many different things with it going forward. Even creating some music that goes along with a book or
Oh,
whatever.
I've been working on
Yeah,
it.
creating merch at certain points for different things. A whole new punk version of the Harry Potter world type scenario.
That's kind of what I have actually described it as. Like how many
Oh,
stories
awesome.
I've been saying, it's kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
because one and originally when I wrote this, it had a lot of like cussing in it.
Hmm.
And my publicist was like, "Look, we could get this in schools if you take that out." And at first I was a little offended. I'm like, "This is my
Sure.
like
Yeah,
artwork." Like
yeah.
what. And then I talked to he was my developmental editor and also an artist that I work with a lot named you. And I was like, well, what do you think of that? And he's like, screw that, take that out. This could be some alt kids Harry Potter. And then it
Right.
just hit me like, oh, whoa, this really could be. So
Yeah.
I took all the cuss words out. It had to get it reformatted and just go through the step again. But now, it is something that kids, I say 16 plus, but it is rated for 12. But it is still has some violence and stuff in there. But it's yeah, I agree. And the merch thing, that's so funny too, because I met a lady named Rory who has a book podcast, and one of my friends, Trey, he got me on her podcast, and she also makes dolls. And so we have been having meetings about getting these dolls made. She wants to do all the doll line for the book, and that spurred into doing a stop motion video with the dolls. So now we're
Right.
working on maybe doing a stop motion short film for the story with the dolls. And I was doing plushies and cardboard cutouts and all this weird merch similar to I didn't even make this connection until you just did. So it's actually really funny. So, but that was like my first idea. Is like, let me make all this like stuff that's not typical
Yeah.
for like a book, but
Yeah.
that's hilarious. You just kind of like bridged a huge gap in my brain right now.
That's what I do, man. That's what I do. At least that's what I'm trying to do. Anyway,
You did it.
the one one of the things that I always want to remind the audience as we're closing out this episode, and it was phenomenal. I appreciate you coming on, sharing your story with the creative community, letting them learn a little bit more from your perspective about what it's like on that side of the music. But one of the things that I always want to remind the audience of at the end is to always listen to your heart, but also be kind to your mind.